In the Wolf's Den. Three Hounds on Yellow Field. Summary. A love story in the middle of the war, between two young people who shouldn't fall in love. Princess Myrcella Baratheon was trying to escape from her betrothal to the Dawn Prince when she recklessly rides to Casterly Rock. However, she lost her way and caught between the War of the Five Kings, and into the arms of the king in the north. Notes. I had a dream about Robb Stark and I am writing this fic based on the dream. Asterisk disclaimer. Please read asterisk. Westeros version of Stockholm Syndrome. A Romeo and Juliet theme. All women Poth, excluding the epilogue. Sorry, no Daenerys, no Theon, and no Night King. At the start of this story, Myrcella is 14, underage in our society but not underage in this medieval setting. Robb is 17. English is not my native tongue, so please excuse any asterisk weird asterisk grammatical errors sad smiley. This author is also a plotter. Please refer to warnings and tags before proceeding. Contain abuse and non-con, so please proceed with caution. Author will not post TW before the start of the chapter. Thank you. Happy Smiley. Chapter 1. Chapter text. The sun almost completely sank when she slipped down from her mare. The red, orange and purple tinge in the sky hurt her eyes. She didn't know how long she hadn't slept. Even if she could close her eyes, the slightest sound would make her jerk in surprise and choose to climb the mare and spurred away. Now the mare is angry and refuses to move. If I were you, I'd be angry at me too, she sighed, trying to caress its mane, but the mare trotted away to graze. Her gown grew dirtier each passing day and she never felt so filthy in her whole life. She never passed a day without a bath, and look at her now, her golden hair is tangled and sticks to her sweaty scalp, adorned with leaves and twigs. The stockings under her gown were torn a few days ago, but she still uses it for keeping her legs warm at night. Her skin started to feel hot and flaking. 5 days had passed until the mare refused to go further and stopped abruptly by the bank of the river filled with brown reddish mud. She dragged her sore feet to the river, pulled off the stockings and dipped her legs into the cold water that instantly feels like a balm on her dry broken skin. She washed her face, her neck and even dipped her hair to at least shed some dirt away. She was tempted to strip out of her dirty gown and cloak, but being alone in the woods at dusk worried her, so she contented herself that at least her face and half of her hair were out of dust. She could ease her thirst, too, if she could make a fire and boil the water. The provisions she stole from Sir Aris had run dry 2 days ago, and she had not eaten anything save for berries and other fruits she found on the forest floor. Her stomach rumbled now, and for the 3rd time in that afternoon she questioned herself of her reckless, impulsive plan to go to Casterly Rock. They were shipping her off to faraway land, Dorne, they say, to marry a man she never got to meet. Her mother had fiercely fought for her to stay in King's Landing, even going so far as to threaten Tyrion Lannister, her uncle, whom she was truthfully fond of. I am the queen, my only daughter stays with me, or I'll have your head, her mother had said. And when Stannis and his armies landed on our shore, what will you do then? Let them take your children. Tyrion replied, they'd kill Joffrey and Tommen, a quick death for sure, but Myrcella. They'd rape her first before they cut her throat. She had shuddered with dread by her uncle's honest reply. So you seal my daughter, my only daughter, in a crate and ship her away. Cersei breathed venom. We need Dorne to supply soldiers, provisions, or at least to make sure they are not declaring to our enemies. Myrcella will be safer in Dorne, away from the war your kingly son started. Tyrion's voice softened at her sobs and turned to her, taking her hand in his. Believe me, Myrcella, I myself hate doing this. He looked pained as she stared into his mismatched eyes. She could only nod back then. She might be young, just past her 14th name day and not yet flowered to her mother's delight, but she understands war enough to realize the reasoning in Tyrion's plan. As a lady, a princess, nonetheless, she was also expected to marry and win alliances for her brother to win the War of the Five Kings. She was never close to Joffrey ever since she could remember. Joffrey is cruel, deep down she knew it. The War of the Five Kings started not long after her father's death and the beheading of his hand, Lord Eddard Stark, by her brother for treason. A foolish decision whispered by resentful peasants and highborns alike, since thousands of people died, and thousands more starved because of the war it kick-started. The war is a three-way battle for the Iron Throne, fought between Joffrey, who is now king of the Seven Kingdoms, and their father's younger brothers Stannis and Renly Baratheon. Alongside there are also two independence movements, the North and the Iron Islands, each naming their own lords as kings. What if that Dawn Prince turns out like Robert? Cersei demanded. What then? We will send a king's guard with her. The imp walked on his stunted legs towards the door. If the city falls when the enemies come, at least she'd be safe there. And so they sent her away, choosing Sir Aris Oakurt as her escort. Her imp uncle had devised a clever plan, sailed her to Dawn and made a sent-away ceremony for the whole King's Landing to see her off aboard the royal vessel. Only when she settled in her cabin, Sir Aris informed her that she'd be snuck ashore again at midnight to Duskendale, circling the capital through the King's Road and passing the Rosa Road before finally reaching Dawn by horse. Sir Aris had her dressed plainly, stripped from all her high-born attributes, and advised her to conceal her face and hair in the hood of her cloak. "Is my brother going to win the war?" she asked the King's Guard then, as they trotted down the road. "He might be," Princess Sir Aris answered. "For the good of the realm, he must. If war comes, won't I and Tommen be safe in Casterly Rock?" She was tempted at the idea. Casterly Rock was way much better than being in Dawn. Last time she heard, Uncle Jaime was sent there to gather supporters for Joffrey to defend his throne. Uncle Jaime was always kind to her, he would not turn her away if she showed up. "Dawn is the safest place right now, Princess. This war is already knocking on our door. A war started by my cruel brother," she choked back her anger. "And I was among those who paid the price. Are you not happy with the imp's plan?" Sir Aris had asked her. "Am I not?" She asked herself then, and now. For years she heard her mother's fury for being a broodmare, even her cries at night if her mother thought no one heard. Despite what people whispered about Cersei Lannister, she knew how fiercely her mother loved her children. Even though she appreciated Uncle Tyrion's goodwill and understood the need to secure alliances for his brother's war, she couldn't help but be reminded of how bitter her mother grew in the arranged marriage. Septa Eglantine had taught her to be dutiful, as women of noble birth are expected to marry for alliances, but "I will never marry for love." The sole reason she hadn't betrothed to anyone before this Dawn Prince was because Cersei had wrestled and fiercely fought every marriage proposal from other houses. Her not being flowered became the main excuse her mother used. Now, even her mother had to yield to the idea of marrying her off to this foreign man. "And here I am," she thought sadly as she walked to collect leaves and bark, anything dry enough to start fire. Only once did she successfully make a fire, but the process made her palms bleed. Now they are still sore, but she is too weak and unable to pass the night without any warmth. Yesterday she thought she saw yellow eyes peering at her through the trees. It might just be her imagination, starving and sleepless, that her mind gave into imagination. But she was terrified nonetheless. As soon as the sun set, the forest became filled with sound. Owls hooted and crickets creaked with the sound of the river. She shivered and knelt in front of a tinder nest she made, praying the gods were good to grant her fire again tonight. She just rolled the spindle between her hands when it tore her blistered skin, making it bleed again, and she screamed in pain. The thought of giving up scares her, remembering a set of yellow eyes watching her last night. It best if she has fire nearby. "Oh, please, please, I need to make fire," she started to cry, biting her lips to resist the pain when she maintained pressure as the spindle rolled between her hands. After several minutes of trying, she accepted her defeat. No fire tonight, no food and no clean water to drink. Either she died of starvation or killed by wild animals. Myrcella sobbed silently, soaking her torn hands in the cold river water. How foolish I was to run from Sir Aris. Perhaps if I accept my fate and go to Dawn, I would not end up like this, she thought. It was too late now. She had ridden for days, but she couldn't find the right direction to Casterly Rock. She realized she had been circling the same area, and now she was too weak to continue her journey. Along the way there were no other travelers, and all the inns were either burned to the ground or abandoned. It was her hunger that drove her into the forest, seeking fruits to eat, and now she was lost in it. The mare shifted anxiously. Myrcella lay on the ground by the river, her muscles ached and she closed her eyes. She thought of her mother, pretty and grand, and how people used to compliment her like the younger version of her mother. She thought of her sweet younger brother Tommen, barely 10 but quirky and sweet. The bush rustled from the wind. She could hear the mare wind nearby, but she did not care anymore. You can go, she said softly, her eyes too heavy to open. I am sorry I dragged you this way. The mare whined even louder. She opened her eyes to see the bushes in front of her whistled by the chilly wind. A pair of yellow eyes stared back at her from behind the shadows of the trees, illuminated by the moonlight. She was too weak to move, laying motionless by the river. The mare let out a shriek and trotted away, leaving her, as the eyes coming out slowly from the shadows of the trees. A wolf, she realized. The beast sniffed the air and looked back at her, and her last thought was how unusually big the wolf was, not that she saw wolves every day. She closed her eyes again, giving in to the inevitable. Chapter 2. Chapter text. Her body felt light. Somehow she no longer felt the cold of the night or how hard the ground was beneath her. Perhaps I was dead, she thought. Something soft poked at her cheek. She remembered the yellow-eyed beast coming from the trees. Its grey fur bristled with the wind, the extraordinary sharp teeth bare at her, ready to attack. The wolves came to feast on me, but why didn't I feel pain at all? Instead she recalled it was no longer cold, like she was enveloped in a pile of feathers. The nudging continued as in purpose. She groaned, trying to move her legs. She is alive, my lord. I am alive. Can you hear me? Can you stand up, girl? Wolf, she managed to say, her voice hoarse and sounded like someone else's. The sun hurt her eyes and she groaned, shutting her eyes again. When she dared to open up, she saw several men standing before her. The one who spoke to her was on his knees and held out a bag of water. Yes, yes, wolves roamed this area, girl. You are lucky not to be eaten alive last night, sleeping under the sky with no fire. You are only frightening the girl, Locke, a man behind him sneered. She blinked a few times to adjust her eyes to the sunlight. Each of the men surrounding her wearing thick armor and coats made of furs. Their faces pious and stern, some looked at her suspiciously. She took the water bag from the man and gulped the water down greedily, thankful for the cool liquid on her sore throat. Are you hurt, girl? Why are you alone in the woods in this dire time? The man on a horse asked, not unkindly. No, my lord. I am lost, my lord. Where are you heading? She couldn't say Casterly Rock, so she instead uttered, King's Landing, my lord. The men looked at each other unceasingly, but the man on the horse did not even look surprised. You are highborn, dressed like a wench, he said softly as if to himself. What is your name, girl? Jane Stone, if it pleases my lord. The man's strange eyes pierced into hers, strangely paler than stone but darker than milk. She has never seen any eyes like those. She shuddered beneath the cold stare. Jane, the weird-eyed man, spoke softly, but she could hear every word easily. A bastard from the Vale, so far away from home, lost in the cold Red Fork. Are you alone, Jane? No, my lord, I was with my father. She swallowed hard, worried that the men would catch her lie. They do look at her warily. Thank you, my lord, for the water. I should continue my journey. He looked thoughtful. He wore rich fur and on his cloak there was a sigil, a red man hanging upside down on a white X-shaped cross on black background. I knew that sigil, she thought, wrecked her already exhausted mind to recall Grand Maester Pycelle's lessons. Before the men could utter a word she bowed and tried to walk away. Locke snatched her arm, jerking her to stop on her track. She whimpered at the strength of the older man's hand. My lord is not done with you, girl. What is your father's name? The weird-eyed man asked. When she cannot answer fast enough, Locke's arms grow tighter on her. Is this your father, Jane? The weird-eyed man on the horse threw a ball at her and she blinked in confusion as the ball rolled on the muddy river banks, missing her feet by the inch. The ball had light brown fur. She thought for a moment before realizations dawned on her. It was not a ball. His comely face now a ruin, missing most of his skin. She saw the red flesh and muscles, and even in such grotesque ruin she knew who it was. She didn't remember if she screamed, or just blacked out where she stood. She only remembered how unforgiving Locke's arm seized her and the cold chuckle from the weird-eyed man. Take her, she heard him say. The next thing she remembered was chains on her hands, on her feet, and they even gagged her. She was put on a brown horse with Locke. In my family we say, a naked man has few secrets, a flayed man, none, she heard the weird-eyed man speak to her. Your father, if he really was your father, was a strong man. We flayed most of his face, down to his shoulder, but he didn't break. We have to chop his head instead. But it was fun while it lasted. Now he gazed at her for a moment, judging silently. I'll take you and let's see if you really are what you told. Though I highly doubt so. They rode hard without stopping. Locke gripped her waist so hard he might have bruised her. Sometimes his hairy hands sneaked up to her breasts and kneaded softly before roughly pulling his hands again. She wanted to vomit every time she felt his hands on her breasts, but there was nothing she could heave because her stomach was empty. The chains they put on her rattled noisily, drowning out every sob she couldn't muffled. In the evening they finally came into a castle and rode through its sluice gate. The castle stood proudly like an island surrounded by rivers, its walls rise so high from the waters and its towers command opposite shores. She recognized the castle right away, Riverrun. Once inside quickly they unhorsed and Locke pulled her arm and half dragged her into the great hall where more men at arms gathered. The castle's great hall was decorated and furnished richly with red and blue. Tapestries and shields and banners decorated the walls. She saw Tully's silver trout and Stark's grey wolf hanging majestically behind high chairs placed in the center of the dais. A man with a fiery red beard was sitting on one of the chairs, listening to a maester. Lord Bolton. The red-bearded man looks up and acknowledges the weird-eyed man as they roll into the hall. Lord Tully. The weird-eyed man nodded. It is past time to have you back, my lord. My nephew is expecting you. Ah, yes. I will meet him in his solar, then. No need, my lord. Another voice came from behind the dais. I saw you riding into the castle. All the men in the great hall bowed deep as a young man appeared from the upper end of the hall located beyond the dais. The king in the north's appearance favors his Tully side with stocky build, bright blue eyes and thick red-brown hair. His eyebrows furrowed as in deep thought, making his young handsome face look troubled. A large grey-haired wolf with golden-yellow eyes followed him and settled near his feet as the young king took his seat next to Edmure Tully. His blue eyes wandered to the weird-eyed man. Did you find the girl, Lord Bolton? He asked the weird-eyed man. Girl? What girl? Edmure Tully couldn't conceal his confusion. The king ignored him. We did find a girl, your grace. The weird-eyed man regarded as Lord Bolton nodded and signaled Locke to bring her up front. The gag was removed from her mouth, but not the chains on her feet and her hands. She was shoved in front of Lord Edmure Tully, who glared at her, and the young king. Is this the right girl? Both the king in the north and his giant wolf looked at her and she recognized his wolf as the beast that came to her last night. Are they expecting her? Are they going to kill her like they killed Sir Aris? She thought wildly, fear clasped her heart. The king nodded. Thank you, I can always rely on you, Lord Bolton. Is there any entourage? It was, your grace. But they didn't travel with the girl. It seemed that, they were looking for the girl, too. Any prisoners? Lord Bolton shifted on his feet. No, your grace. We took care of them. They chopped Sir Aris's head, murderer. She wanted to scream. My father outlawed flaying, the king in the north said, staring coldly at his bannerman. We are not in the north, your grace. And we did pull some information. Such as? The weird-eyed man gazed at her before looking back to his king. Did you know who this girl is, when you sent us to find her? Lord Bolton asked. It is none of your concern, my lord. Lord Bolton bowed. And the information? The king asked impatiently. Well, Lord Bolton chose his words carefully, though the leader died not disclosing anything important, but one of the guards traveling with him did say some things. Princess Myrcella Baratheon was traveling to Dorne for a betrothal. On their second night on the road, the princess managed to escape her entourage. The guard and his leader thought she might try to go to Casterly Rock. The king's eyes met hers and she looked away. You are saying that this wench is Princess Myrcella Baratheon? Edmure Tully raised his eyebrow. How can we be sure this is Myrcella Baratheon? She is, I assure you, uncle, the king said, never waving his eyesight off her. We've met in Winterfell, when King Robert came to ask my father to become his hand. All eyes in the great hall now fell on her, anger, distrust, disgusted, but mostly anger. She is half Lannister anyway, the house that is said to have beheaded the Stark patriarch, took his daughters hostage and might try to kill their crippled sibling. There is no love for Lannisters here. She might have ended up like Cerys, flayed and beheaded and given to wolves. Good plan, I'd say, Lord Bolton continued, to dress her like a wench and travel without any banners, like common folks. Not sailing to Dawn because Stannis's fleet might intercept the royal vessel. The flaw was the girl had her own will, and mid-journey round to Casterly Rock. Then no need to chain her, she's just a girl and a princess. The king stared coldly at Lord Bolton. She thought she saw anger too in his eyes, but she did not dare to interpret further. Her legs felt weak standing under the gaze of the men in the room. Her hands ached under the iron chains, and the wound in her palms throbbed painfully. If they keep talking like that, she'd succumb to darkness once again. A man, she gave a silent prayer it was not Locke, came forward to remove the chains and shackle from her wrists and ankles. Just precautions, Your Grace. Thank you, Lord Bolton. That'd be all. The king dismissed the court. She was left in the great hall, now under the staring eyes of Edmure Tully, the Maester, and the king in the north himself. I know you are Princess Myrcella Baratheon, Robb Stark said to her, softly. She didn't know what to reply, so for politeness she nodded. You will be safe here under my roof, I guarantee that. Unfortunately, in this dire time you'll stay with me here in Riverrun, as my sisters are in your brother's court. Do you understand? You're my hostage, was all left unsaid from his part. Thank you, Your Grace, she murmured. I am sorry for your guards. Tears rolled down her cheek again at the mention of Cerys and her household guards. You will be treated with respect and given appropriate accommodation suitable for people on your station. Maester Vimen, please make sure the cuts and bruises are tended to. She'd need a bath and food, too, I'd wager. See to it. The old Maester nodded and bowed, summoning 2 handmaidens to take her away from the great hall. As per the king's order, the Maester cared for her wounds, applying ointment on her cuts and making sure she is not in any mortal danger before sending her off to her solar. It was a guest room in Riverrun, spacious with a large bed and private bathroom which she sighed in longing as the maids poured pails of hot water into a large wooden tub. She was stripped from her dirty dress and soaked herself in the tub. A maid has dropped perfume oil so that the water smells of fresh citrus and mint. Leaning against the tub, she closed her eyes and remembered that she had to stay in Riverrun during the war, as his 2 sisters were in King's Landing as Joffrey's prisoners. Milady, a maid's soft voice was heard behind her and she turned. Ah, princess. I was told to bring you to dine with the king if you've done bathing. She nodded, thank you. The late Lord of Riverrun, Hoster Tully, had 2 daughters who later became Lady Stark and Lady Arryn. She was given one of their old gowns, the ones that still look decent and fit to her. It came in dark green even though she suspected the real color was more bright green. It did not feel dirty or musty, and she wears it gratefully. The king was waiting in his solar guarded only by his grey beast that sniffed at her before it took its place on his master's heel. I hope my direwolf didn't scare you, princess. He did, Your Grace, but now I understand he didn't mean harm, Myrcella replied, curtsied awkwardly to him. Last time she saw him in Winterfell, he was the one who bowed at her. Robb Stark smiled and for a moment she was confused of why a king would smile at his hostage. Joffrey surely never smiles unless the event was to humiliate or to torture someone, which he indulged. Please take a seat. You must be hungry. I am. Thank you. Your Grace. Warm corn soup, piles of soft buttered bread, mutton and beef, trouts baked with herbs and lemon juice made her mouth water. She tried to eat politely even though her stomach rumbled loudly as the smells of the food in front of her reached her nostrils. Robb seemed as if he was suppressing a laugh. It might not be as grand as what you have in King's Landing, he started, but in war even nobles and mostly king have to look after his people. His men cannot go to bed hungry, or go to war knowing the families they left behind are starving. You are very kind, Your Grace. She took a spoonful of the corn soup and almost cried on how delicious it tasted. My direwolf, Grey Wind, saw you circling in the forest. You almost froze to death last night, if not for Grey Wind keeping you warm. I sent Lord Bolton and his best hunters to go find you. You are very valuable to keep my sisters safe. The buttered bread suddenly was hard to swallow. Tell me, about my sisters, he demanded. Are they treated well? Yes, she wanted to say, but something in his eyes stopped any words spilling out from her mouth. Was it sadness she saw? Longing? She had heard about how the young Robb Stark, eldest son and heir of Lord Eddard Stark, had called his bannermen and marched south to avenge his fallen father and rescue his sisters, while announcing that the North will be free from tyranny of the Iron Throne. No, she finally said, barely a whisper, and the young king tensed. No. Joffrey made his Kingsguard beat Sansa bloody, and Arya, we cannot find Arya, who's missing and presumed dead since the purging of your household in King's Landing. Tell me, he urged. You've my word that you will be treated with respect, no matter what you will say, as long as you tell me the truth. They beat Sansa, she finally spoke, feeling ill and remorseful. She only saw the afterwards, of course, how the purple welts peeked beneath the Stark girl dress. How wobbly she'd walk after the beatings she endured in the throne room. Once, she thought she saw the oldest Stark girl's broken lip, but when she asked her mother she was dismissed. She never asked Sansa directly, but more than twice she had heard how Joffrey brags about it. Every time you win a battle, my brother would order his Kingsguard to beat Sansa. And Arya? What about my sister Arya? She shook her head. I heard that she's missing, the day Lord Stark challenged Joffrey's reign. They sat in silence. A minute passed, then two. I am truly sorry. Your Grace, she offered meekly. I understand I did not deserve your kindness, not after. Which I'd still offer, nonetheless, he cut her off. But when I marched to King's Landing, I'd have my hands on your brother to make him answer for the crimes against my house. She shuddered. My brother is not an honorable man, but he is my brother still. One of the tableware was a small knife used to grease butter. The pointy end was not too sharp, but maybe if you plug it in with the right strength and angle, it might be quite hurtful. She could defend herself with it, giving a little resistance if they mean to hurt her. But what about the direwolf? The direwolf's golden yellow eyes kept lurking towards her, as if it could read her mind. Before she could react, Robb Stark swiftly pulled his dagger and stood up from the table to grab her hair, which hung loosely on her shoulder. She shrieked in surprise as he cut a strand of it with the dagger. Robb calmly took his seat again, securing the hair he cuts from her on the table. Without a word he produced a necklace from his cloak. She instantly recognized it, made of pure gold mined from the depth of Casterly rock and chiseled with a motif of a roaring lion. Her mother gave her the necklace as a gift for her betrothal. To remind me that I am a lioness, she thought. Sir Aris had her stripped from all her sigils and jewels, but she had asked him to keep the necklace safe until they reached their destination. Are you going to have me beaten, too? She had to ask, hating the fact that her voice trembled. Robb Stark looked disgusted and offended by her question. No. But I need to send Raven to your mother and brother about you. I am your prisoner, I am at your mercy, she said, before adding, Your Grace. He looked at her sadly. Yes, and we are at war. I will keep you safe, for that you have my word. But I cannot guarantee the same treatment for Joffrey, or the Queen, when I get to them. Suddenly she didn't feel hungry anymore. She asked if the king still had any needs of her, besides a few strands of her hair, because if not she'd like to retreat to her bedchamber. My guards will escort you to your chamber, princess. Thank you, Your Grace. The 3 guards took her back to the front door of her solar, opened it before shoving her unceremoniously inside. She heard the sound of a key being turned and sat on her bed, alone in the dark but warm with the roof above her head. She envied Sansa Stark for having a brother that raised an army to save her, to avenge their father. She saw it now, how the older girl always looked hopeful whenever the king in the north was mentioned or brought into conversation without Joffrey within earshot. How the table had turned, she said to herself, in irony and self-pity. I wish now I had Sansa Stark's courage and faith that her brother would win the war and come to rescue her, but now I only feel dread. My own brother would not come to save me, not while he was busy cutting cats and torturing his prisoners, starving his people. I should just tell the king in the north to kill me and be done with it. Joffrey wouldn't care much whether I was alive or not. She gave in to sleep. Her dreams were filled with strange yellow eyes lurking at her behind the shadows, headless guards in their crimson and gold armors, before a knight in grey armor and black-brown furs that looked sadly to her with his bright blue eyes. Chapter 3. Chapter text. 8 days later she learnt it was not Joffrey who raised an army to save her. It was her grandfather, Tywin Lannister, and her uncle Jaime Lannister who marched to the Riverlands with 60,000 men at arms, demanding her release. King Robb had sent for her to join him and Lady Catelyn for supper where she learned the news. The look Lady Catelyn gave her could freeze even the hot Dawn Desert when she entered the King's Solar, escorted by 3 northern men at arms. It was the first time she met Lady Catelyn again after Winterfell, and the situation could not be more awkward as the supper progresses. Lady Catelyn didn't even try to hide her displeasure having to share a meal with her. "Thank you, for lending me your dresses, Lady Stark." She tried to offer her gratitude, only for the older woman to nod curtly. "It was an old dress, Princess," she replied. Robb shot his mother a look and Lady Catelyn added, "I hope my old dresses are more useful to you, before we find a seamstress to make you a better one. Though I am afraid the current situation is not feasible if a prisoner of war wears such luxury." "Mother, Princess Myrcella Baratheon is our guest," Robb cautioned. "Is she?" Lady Catelyn raised an eyebrow. "I thought she was Lannister all over." Robb shifted in his seat, his direwolf at his heel. The beast was so huge that it barely fit in the room, even when it was sitting. "My mother is a Lannister, Lady Stark. But my father, King Robert, is Baratheon," Myrcella said, feeling like a little girl under the Stark matriarch glaring eyes. "You are Lannister all over when your kingly brother beheaded my husband," she said with wrath on her tone. Lady Catelyn opened her mouth again to say more before her son put a hand on hers and she looked away, pursing her lips together. "Please excuse my mother," Robb said, "she just returned from Dragonstone, on my behalf. She is exhausted." "I truly understand, Your Grace, my lady. I hope your journey went well." Lady Catelyn did not look at her but continued to eat, which she also did. She felt stupid saying what they must have known already, but the young king and his mother's behavior were tense as if there was something she does not know. And she didn't blame how Lady Catelyn reacted to her heart ached too, knowing how scattered Lady Catelyn's family now. To have her eldest son marching south to free Lord Eddard, only to receive news that Joffrey chopped his head, one daughter missing and presumed dead, the other beaten on a daily basis in Joffrey's court. The rest of Lady Catelyn's sons are alone in Winterfell. If she were Lady Catelyn she'd be mad at the nearest Baratheon Lannister, too. Among the news, she also learned that Jaime Lannister attacked some Riverlords sent by Edmure Tully into the Westerlands. There was a battle, the Riverlords were sent to Golden Tooth to prevent the Lannister army from crossing into their lands, but it ended gruesomely on the Riverlords' side, as some of the High Lords were among the casualties and the rest were forced to retreat to Riverrun. "They are coming for you," Princess Robb Stark said, looking at her calmly. "Your uncle's victory at the Battle of the Golden Tooth allowed Tywin Lannister to move northwest through the Riverlands unimpeded. They will be here soon. What are you going to do, Your Grace?" Suddenly she was afraid. For what, she does not know. Somehow Robb Stark's blue eyes emitted a ferocity she had never seen in the eyes of another man. Maybe some seasoned warriors, like Joffrey's sworn shield the Hound, or Sir Barristan Selmy. But those are much older than Robb Stark, and more seasoned. "A green soldier boy," her mother laughed when she heard Robb Stark marched south. But no, his eyes are just like them, Myrcella thought. Like those seasoned warriors, who had seen blood and hungry for more. A boy with the weight of the world on his shoulders, she suddenly realized. Was it the war, or the crown they placed on his head that made him grow so fast? Candlelight emanates from Robb Stark's eyes, making it look blur and the depth of it makes her short of breath. "You will be safe here in Riverrun," he said, and she was too drawn to his eyes that she almost missed his next words. "I leave before the first light." She spent her days in her room, reading and sometimes sewing. Robb Stark had been kind enough to let her borrow any books she wanted from the library, under Maester Vimen guidance and supervision. On her first morning in Riverrun, the king in the north came to her solar to make sure she was comfortable enough as his guest of honor. It was then he realized that she didn't have much to spend her time with, and made the gesture to open up the library for her. At first she was wary, but then she grew to appreciate his effort. Before their awkward supper with Lady Catelyn, Robb has already used to invite her to dine with him on several occasions. They'd eat their food in silence, the sound that was heard was the clatter of their cutlery or the sound of his direwolf chewing bones under the table. He seemed lost in his own mind. Sometimes out of blue he'd ask about his sisters, his late father, or the household gods that were slain in King's Landing. She knew he invited her to eat with him because he wanted to hear about his family, without other company to eavesdrop. She didn't spend her time much around the younger Stark girl, Arya, but she knew Lord Eddard hired a Bravo C to train the girl in sword playing. Robb was delighted to hear it, and a rare smile appeared on his handsome face. When she told him that sometimes she envied Arya for having a father that was so open-minded he allowed his daughter to lift a sword, even a wooden one, Robb's face shone with pride. They quickly changed to a stern and angry one if she told him about Sansa. Among the Stark girls she spent more time with Sansa Stark, for their love of needlework. One time she asked Sansa if the older Stark girl would like to visit the King's Landing's Godswood with her, which Sansa accepted. But Sansa's needlework is much better than I do, she once said, and again she was rewarded with his smile. She is a gifted seamstress, Robb replied. For a moment he slid off his kingly mask and became the boy in his age, talking proudly about his little sisters. Thank you for spending time with my sisters, with Sansa especially, after she lost everyone she knew. The day Robb Stark and his army marched out through the River Ungate was a cloudy day. The wind blew hard and rain drizzled down since dawn. He left her with 3 Stark household guards who looked at her like she was some annoying dirt on their boots, but she paid no mind to them. As day after day progressed, she dined alone in her solar, finding that she missed Robb Stark's presence. He was the only person in the huge castle that ever spoke to her, aside from Maester Vimen. 3 days after Robb left, a raven came and Lady Catelyn rode out with Sir Roderick Castle to meet Robb somewhere between the north and the Riverlands, or wherever they camped. She wanted to ask Maester Vimen where they could be, but she didn't dare under the hawking eyes of her 3 bodyguards. So instead she read and she sewed, until one afternoon she looked up to her window and saw a vast rider galloping towards the castle bearing Stark and Tully sigils. She knocked on her solar's door and one of the guards opened it from outside, looking irritated. I saw riders coming through, she said. The king arrived. I'd like to go to meet them. What for? I am not a prisoner, am I? She asked, and her guard grumbled. They followed her to the great hall where almost all riders gathered. Serving maids were already busy giving glasses of ale and wine to the soldiers who had entered the great hall. A few lords sat in long wooden chairs and Myrcilla's heart started to pound as she saw them covered in mud and almost all dripping blood. 2 men carried their comrade, his left foot missing, and Myrcilla took a sharp breath at the sight. She located Maester Vimen, who was treating the wound of a large white-haired man with 4 chains linked by a central ring sigil on his breastplate. Blood flowed from his temples, which was torn by his opponent's sword. More wounded soldiers came through the door and filled the great hall. Everywhere she looked she saw blooded men at arms. Those who were missing a limb moaned and screamed, the rest just sat on the stone floor and sipped their wine. Did they win? If that is so, then what about the Lannister troops? Is Uncle Jaime and her grandfather safe? In a short time the great hall was filled with wounded men. Some still carry arrows caught in their bodies, others suffer from open wounds that pour blood on the floor. We need to amputate that leg. Don't. Please don't take off my foot. Wine for the wounded, and milk of the poppy only for those who need amputation. Strip them out of their armors. Fetch more water and bring me sterilized needles. Hurry. These men need their wounds to be sewn. Maester Vimen's voice pulled her from her eyrie and she hurriedly came to the old Maester. Her 3 guards looked uncertain as they followed her. Maester Vimen, is there anything I can help? She asked. She had to. The old Maester and the servants were overwhelmed by the sudden flood of men, and more were coming through the castle's sluice gate. Princess, you shouldn't be here, Maester Vimen answered. You better go back to your solar. I can help. Please, I want to. The Maester looked doubtful, but he nodded. Fine then. Can you sew wounds? I can try. Maester Vimen gave her threads of silk and sterilized needles. A young man was brought up on a stretcher to her, stripped from the waist up to show a gaping wound on his shoulder. The wound was deep and he groaned in pain even though he was half subdued by wine. She had to resist the nausea when she saw his flesh peeking out from the wound. A woman brought a bowl of water for her to wash her hands. Under the Maester's guidance she cleaned the wound first, and while the bleeding thankfully has stopped, there's still a giant, gaping wound in the soldier's bare shoulder. She'd need to sew it to reduce the chance of infection. Just like when you sew a dress, the maester said as she carefully pushed the needle through the soldier's skin. It was different. She could feel the flesh beneath her finger shuddered to reject puncture after punctures she carefully took. While garments were easy to penetrate and stay still, but not human flesh. They were thick and resilient as she tried to sew above the fat, and when she had gone deep enough she twisted her hand so that the needle started coming up on the other side of the wound. Her hands were shaking the whole affair, but thankfully she managed just fine, or at least she thought so. Good, the maester nodded, satisfied. Now pull the tip of the needle until you have about 1 or 2 inches of the silk left on the right side of the wound, before you release the needle. She did as the maester instructed and created a simple overhand knot with 2 loops to secure the silk. It took her 10 minutes to patch up the soldier, and when she was finished another was brought to her. By her second soldier, Maester Vimen had long gone to tend to other wounded men. She had just finished patching up her 7th soldier when cries were heard from the castle yard. The king in the north. The king in the north. She stood up, the front of her dress and hands covered with blood, but she couldn't find any clean water to soak them. The king in the north. Even the wounded scattered in the great hall shouted for their young king in jubilant cries. The sound of war horns was heard along with the sight of Stark and Tully and Umber and Bolton and other banners fluttering in the wind. She followed several soldiers who could walk into the castle field to see the arrival of the king. The king in the north. Both northern lords and river lords shouted their salutations as Robb Stark rode into Riverrun, his face and his armor covered in blood and dirt. By his side was his giant direwolf, standing as tall as a grown man's waist, its snout the color of human's blood. The king in the north. The king in the north. The king in the north. That day Robb Stark had won more battles in a year than the Lord of Highgarden had in 20. Chapter 4. Chapter text. She was brought into the king's solar. Robb was standing by the windowsill, still wearing his usual grey-brown surcoat over his blooded armor when she entered the room. "Welcome back, your grace," she said, curtsied deeply. Somehow it felt normal to do it now, as his mere presence commands respect. Robb's face was tired, but he stood tall, nodding as he gave her a small smile. "Thank you, princess. I heard you helped Maester Vimen with the wounded soldiers." He eyed her soiled dress. It was the right thing to do, your grace." Robb gestured her to sit, which she complied. "Those are not your men. They are men just the same." He looked taken aback by her response, and she wondered if she had crossed a line. She bowed her head, apologetic. There was dry blood smeared on his sculpted jaw that he had not washed yet. She had to resist the urge to stare at his hardened face. "I should thank you," then Robb said, still standing despite there were vacant chairs. "There is no need to thank me, your grace, I should be the one thanking you. You have been kind enough to me." She realized they were alone in his solar. No servants or guards, even his direwolf was not present. Everyone seemed to be busy with themselves after a battle. "Is there anything you need of me, your grace?" she asked. "Yes. I want to inform you firsthand that we slain hundreds, if not thousands, of Lannister men-at-arms," Robb said. "I've promised the Queen Regent and your brother that if my peace terms are not met I'll litter the South with Lannister dead. My grandfather, is he beaten at the Green Fork? I heard he retreated to Harrenhal with tails between his legs and arrows poking from his back. And my uncle?" Robb's bright blue eyes pierced into hers. "The Kingslayer fought bravely. We took him alive, but unfortunately not before he cut down Lord Caster's sons," he added grimly. She nodded. "Thank you for telling me, your grace." She hated war and what it brings. "You have the right to know. Are you going to kill us? My uncle and I mean," and she hated how her voice trembled. "No. You are both more valuable alive," he said plainly. "Can I meet him?" "Not this time, I am afraid. We put him in the dungeon." She nodded, trying not to show him how it broke her heart. "Is there anything else, your grace?" "No. If you will excuse me." "Of course, princess." She curtsied and was about to open the door when Robb called her. "Princess Myrcella." "Yes, your grace." "Don't wander too far." Dash. The castle was again loud and busy with thousands of people gathered, Soldiers told stories about how Robb Stark split his army into two and delivered chaos to the Lannister armies. Servants and stable boys talked about how men flocked onto the young wolf's cause, the Northern Lords, River Lords, and now news came about Lady Catelyn's success in bringing Stannis Baratheon's fleet. Lady Catelyn has gone again on another lobbying, this time to her sister Lady Arryn in the Vale. Now with the danger kept at bay by the king in the north, or the young wolf, she overheard the common folk say in admiration, "People seek Riverrun as refuge." The war had left a bitter taste surrounding the Riverlands, while the Western and the Crown lands were soon approached by it. The king and his army would soon march south again, this time with Stannis Baratheon's army and perhaps the Knights of the Vale, if Lady Catelyn secures an alliance. The victories Robb collected for the Riverlords owed him yet another title, the King of the Trident. She mused how a young man just barely 2 or 3 name days older than Joffrey could make such an impact. Her 3 guards followed her to a small September built by the Tullys in Riverrun, beside the Maester Tower. She lights a candle in front of each of the 7 statues but more in the feet of the stranger, offering prayers for the fallen. Lannister, Baratheon, Stark, Tully, Karstark, every house were the same in the eyes of death. No matter highborn nor lowborn, all men bow to the stranger. She prayed for Sansa too, for she knew every time Robb Stark won a battle Joffrey would summon her to the throne room to have her beaten by his Kingsguards. Tears fell from her eyes as she imagined Sansa Stark's fate at the moment. On the other hand, she was relieved that Robb came back safe and whole from the battlefield. How strange was that, she thought, as she rose to her feet after her prayers. I shouldn't pray for the enemy who keeps me and my uncle hostage. I should pray for my own brother's win so that I could come home, but to what? What is home? They'd send me away again against my will. She was about to leave the September when a heated argument was heard outside. A bearded old man with his dented and blooded armor bearing white sunburst on a black field was arguing with her guards. 3 other men stood behind him, their swords at hand. Move, the bearded man warned her guards. The younger ones looked wary and took a step back, but the oldest of the 3, Walton, she remembered, shook his head and unsheathed his sword. Apologies, my lord. The king has ordered us no one to approach the princess. You are a good northern man, Walton. But I only want Lannister's blood, not our own. No. King's order, my lord. So you are laying your life for that abomination, the old man shouted. Can I help you, my lord? Angry eyes turned to look at her as she stepped out from the September. Your father killed my sons, the old man yelled. Blood for blood, you little bitch. I don't know what you are talking about, my lord, but if you please sheathe your swords in this holy place. Before she knew it, the old man launched at her with his sword, but Walton moved quickly to fend off the deadly strike from the iron tip. The 2 younger ones were shocked by the sudden blows, but regained their flexes quick enough to fend off the 3 men brought by Lord Karstark. My lords, please. Her pleas fell to deaf ears as the men kept ringing their steel onto each other. Lord Karstark attacked with such ferocity that Walton was pushed back, defending himself from the old man's sword. It was clear which party had the upper hand, and she screamed as Walton lost his footing and fell. Yield. Her 2 other guards immediately threw their swords to the ground. Bring me the girl. 2 men at arms grabbed her by her arm and shoved her kneeling in front of Rickard Karstark. You little abomination, he spat as he grabbed her by the hair. I will happily present your pretty head to the Kingslayer. See if he likes you on a golden plate. Before she could reply, a wave of grey hit Lord Karstark until the man let go of her hair before falling backwards. Grey Wind stood above the man, holding his chest on the ground with its paws. The direwolf growled loudly, its muzzle just inches from the lord's neck. Grey Wind, to me, another voice was heard, and the direwolf leaped from Lord Karstark's body to stand beside Robb Stark. Robb, along with his battle companions of highborn warriors, appeared from the castle. His companions had already drawn their weapons, but he calmly stood, his hand resting on the hilt of his sword. Though he remained calm, Myrcella sensed his anger, the way he clenched his jaw and how primal the growl his direwolf gave out, its golden eyes never leaving Rickard Karstark. One of his companions helped her to her feet and led her to the young king. I believe you meant no harm to our guest, my lord. Robb asked the older man coldly. Guest? Lord Karstark screamed. She is an abomination. Lannister filth, he spat. She better rot in the deepest dungeon with the Kingslayer. I understand you are grieving, my lord, as does everyone here. Your sons fought gallantly and yet, they fell. I cannot ask for a more loyal and courageous warrior like your sons, Harry and Eddard. At the mention of his sons' names, the older men broke into tears. My sons, he screamed in agony. No fathers should bury their sons. No father nor mother should, my lord, Rob said solemnly. He turned to her with concern in his eyes. Are you hurt, princess? She shook her head. No, your grace. She breathed a sigh of relief seeing Walton standing up, apparently not injured. Rob reached out to confiscate the dust on her cheek. When his hand touched her skin, she felt like she was electrocuted, hypnotized by his blue eyes which seemed to glow under the afternoon sun. He had not removed his leather gloves, and she could smell blood and the sun and sweat emanating from it. Rob turned his attention to Lord Karstark again, who was still grieving his dead sons but didn't give resistance as two men seized him. Let him go, Darin, Rob said, to Lord Karstark's surprise. I understand your grief, my lord. But this accident will not happen again without severe consequences. Those we held hostage will be exchanged with our northern friends, fathers and sons. Grieve, my lord, and return to the battlefield with me to avenge them. Lord Karstark threw himself to the ground again near Rob's feet, sobbing. Her chest almost burst with affection as she watched the young king, dark and solemn, poised with the weight of the world. War truly had chewed a boy and spit out a man. But not my brother, she thought. Take her back, she heard him say, before a firm hand of Daisy Mormont nudged at her. Clean yourself, princess. Today is a tiring day for all of us. The incident with Lord Karstark made Rob double her guards, with Patrick Mallister and Darin Hornwood assigned to check on her periodically. Walton and other Stark men never left her side, and at night they stood guard in front of her door. They still locked her inside her chamber. She still hadn't been allowed to see her uncle as Rob had ordered her to stay in her chamber. Library and the September are the only places she still could visit from time to time, with her guards flocking around her. Lady Catelyn had not returned from the Vale yet, and no ravens from the Eyrie either. The war kept raging in the Riverlands and Westerlands borders, led by Gregor Clegane, the mountain that rides, they say. More and more refugees were coming to Riverrun, and Myrcella knew it only a matter of time before Rob marched again. She had heard the atrocities that became the mountain's reputation. But it is not what troubled her, which made her feel selfish and mean. It was what Lord Karstark had said when he attacked her in front of the September, which troubled her sleepless nights. She had heard it whispered in the Red Keep, spiteful accusations and mean gossips. None of it was true, wasn't it? She remembered her late father, King Robert Baratheon, first of his name and all of those titles. She remembered how big and strong her father was, tossing her in the air and catching her, an act that made her squeal with joy, but her mother seething. But mother never liked anything about her father, though, did she? She remembered her Uncle Jaime, proud and gallant and always smiling to her. Come to think about it, she realized she does not resemble her father at all. Robert was dark and coarse, while her uncle, well, just like her. Before she even realized it, she had come to recall nostalgic memories of her uncle. She remembered he held her for hours when she was crying after Joffrey did something terrible to her, how Uncle Jaime would smirk from across the room as if telling her, "I'm here," inaudibly. He'd be the one she was looking for whenever she was sad or just plain happy to share something. He was always near her, or her mother. Even though she knew Cersei never liked it whenever she caught her with Uncle Jaime, Myrcella knows her uncle loved to spend time with her. She had loved him for that, for being the father figure she never had from Robert. I have to see him, Myrcella thought. I have to see Uncle Jaime. Her chance came 3 days after the incident with Lord Karstark, when Rob came to her chamber. He looked tired, but his eyes woke with caution. "Your Grace," she dipped into her curtside before Rob waved her a hand. "I'd like you to stop doing that," he said with a chuckle. "I never used to it." Rob stared at her and suddenly she felt self-conscious. "My mother's old gowns no longer fit you. There is a seamstress among the refugees. I already tell her to make you some decent gowns. Do you like that, princess?" "Your Grace is too kind. But if it pleases you, I rather have something other than new dresses." "The ones Lady Catelyn lent me are enough," she had to ask. She needed to see Uncle Jaime. "What is it?" Robb looked surprised. "I want to see Jaime Lannister, Your Grace." Robb looked at her, sighing. "Is something troubling you?" "I just want to see a familiar face, Your Grace." He sighed. They sat in silence for a moment. When she thought the young wolf might never grant her request, which she understands because she is his hostage after all, Robb called to Darin Hornwood to escort her to the dungeon. The dungeon was dark, empty and cold, its cells stood silently and the ceiling dripped. It was as if the cells were made right under the river. Jaime Lannister was placed at the further end of the tunnel, chained inside the darkest, smallest cell. She almost cried when she saw him, malnourished and dirty, Jaime Lannister's clean-shaven face now overgrown with whiskers and messy beard. He was dressed in rags, his armor out of sight. "Is that you, my love, or am I dreaming?" His voice a low growl, hoarse from his chapped lips. "Uncle Jaime!" She threw herself to him and hugged her uncle's neck. Jaime Lannister was chained to a stone wall. He couldn't move, but he pressed his cheek to hers. "Don't," he said, "you will ruin your dress. I sit on my own shit." She wanted to laugh and cry at the same time. His uncle was more concerned about her old borrowed dress. "Are you well? They didn't treat you right. As long as they treat you good, or I'd strangle them with their own guts. They are kind to me, uncle. Robb Stark makes sure I am safe." "Does he?" Jaime Lannister let out a crook laugh. "Well, he better be. I will ask Robb Stark to provide better treatment for you." "I doubt it, my dear. I've killed dozens of his followers. But you, I hope you stay safe." Uncle tears are now streaming down her cheeks. She was relieved that the cell was so dark that maybe her uncle couldn't see her crying. "There's so many things I'd like to tell you," she wanted to say. Myrcella, he sensed her sadness, her doubts. He tried to lean to her but his movements were cut short by the chains around his neck and his wrists. "I wished I didn't run away. I thought if I seek you in Casterly Rock you'd shield me from being sent to Dorne, comma. It's all right, little one." "No, it is not. I hate seeing you like this," she sobbed. "Listen," her uncle's voice rising, "I'd do it again, do you hear me? I'd crush the enemy's gate to keep you safe. I'd fight everyone who tries to send you against your will. Do you understand? Stop crying now. It's all right. I know," her heart whispered. "You always have my back. Always." "It's enough, Princess Myrcella. Time to go," Sir Darin's voice interrupted. "Be strong now. Lions will come to get you. A Lannister always pays his debts." She hugged her uncle again, tighter, and felt his head caressing her wet cheek. "I will try to see you again," she whispered. Her uncle smiled, a sad and tired one. "Be safe, little one. Know that I'd kill anyone who tries to harm you." His eyes flicked to her back, to the Stark guards staring at them and to Darin Hornwood. "Tell the king in the north I'd come to get him if he lay a finger on my niece." "You have tried, Kingslayer," Sir Darin mocked. "You are welcome to try again from this cell." Before Hen could pull her from the cell, she kissed Jaime's cheek and promised she'd try to see him again. She'd trade the comfort of her chamber, of her hearth and her food if it meant she can see her uncle, to have him fed and warm. She needs his strength, her kin, her father figure. When she returned to her chamber she was surprised to see Robb Stark was still there, waiting for her. She was too exhausted and too weary, it made her break down again. This time, when she crouched by the door and cried, a pair of strong arms rubbed her shoulders. Even though she buried her face between her knees, she could feel the warmth of his presence when Robb knelt before her, giving consolation in silence. Chapter 5. Notes. See the end of the chapter for notes. Chapter text. She found comfort in helping Maester women tending the sick and wounded, men-at-arms and common folk alike. Reading and sewing were indeed her favorite pastime activities, but over time she could not concentrate on what she read or sew. Her mind always returns to Robb Stark. So being around other people at least put the young wolf out of her mind, though at night she tossed around on her bed, restless that every time she thought of him, it'd make her heart ache for something. It was the time when she gave up trying to sleep and pick up her needles. She was given threads of linen and wool to sew with, and decided to make something just to be busy. The night Robb let her visit Jaime had left her feeling lost, confused and uncertain. He had been kind to her, and after he witnessed how she broke down, he did not say a word other than kneeling with her on the floor. It was weird. She had never felt comforted in such a strange way. All she could manage was a weak "thank you, your grace," with tears and snot on her face, which he only nodded in reply. His eyes shone with such intensity and a gentleness she couldn't describe. She almost yearns to be lost in it forever. Or maybe she already was. A few days after her visit to the dungeon, a squire found her in the Maester Tower as she was helping Maester Vimen overseeing stitch wounds to some soldiers. Robb had allowed her to visit Jaime Lannister again in the dungeon as long as she was accompanied by one of his companions and other guards, another gesture she was thankful for. "Please tell the king that I am very grateful for it," she had said, and the squire bowed before leaving the Maester Tower. Robb did not invite her to dine with him again as he spent his time locked in his chamber with his companions and other lords. She usually eats in her solar alone, but after days of eating alone she finally couldn't stand the silence and decided to break her fast at the Great Hall. Taking care of the sick and wounded makes her surrounded by people, but they never talk much, other than groaning in pain, and she longs to really talk to people. She had tried to make small talk with her maids whenever they helped her bathe or get dressed, but the women ignored her. Even her guards only snorted in annoyance if she spoke to them. Every morning, long wooden tables were placed inside the Great Hall for soldiers and lords to break their fasts together. This seems to be a habit in Winterfell, and Lord Edmure Tully was kind enough to extend it in Riverrun. Piles of bread made of barley and oats were served on the table, along with milk, honey and dates, pork sausages, eggs, and fish porridge. Robb Stark has been true to his word. They were simple meals but were appreciated. Soon she was surrounded by conversations around her, soldiers with sleepy faces chewing bread, lords scooped up porridge with their wooden spoons while chatting in a loud voice. A man burst out laughing across the table. Several serving maids paced around the tables pouring ale and carrying dirty dishes. She had never been surrounded by so many people and conversations, sitting by herself on the bench like other common folk. She rather enjoyed it. The only disappointment was she didn't see Robb Stark on the dais, only Lord Edmure and some other lords with their porridge bowls. She had hoped to see him, to thank him herself for allowing her to visit her uncle again. She used her visitation allowance yesterday after she had finished helping Maester Vimen. "Do you know where the king might be, sir?" She turned to Walton after she finished her meal. Walton seemed to resist rolling his eyes at her question. "How did I know?" he replied rather irritably. At that very moment Patrick Mallister had come to check on her. The young man has sandy brown hair and a friendly grin that always decorate his plain freckled face. "There you are, princess." "Walton, stop being so sullen, you shouldn't have the time for it, guarding such beauty," Patrick Mallister remarked. This time Walton really rolled his eyes. "She wanted to see the king," Walton said in a bored tone. "What business do you have in mind with the king in the north, princess?" Sir Patrick asked, rather curiously. "I just want to offer my gratitude for his kindness, sir," she replied. "I have not seen him for days." "He is busy planning our next move," Sir Patrick said, but offering his arm for her to hold. "But why? I could take you to him. He is in the Godswood." "Godswood? There's Godswood in Riverrun, too." Sir Patrick laughed at her widened eye. "Aye, there's one in here, princess. The only one left in the Riverlands. But of course, there's more in the north. Come see." The Godswood was located at the further east of the castle, separated from other buildings and towers. It's almost forgotten. The only access was through a narrow uneven path with weeds and grass growing irregularly along the way. From the entrance she could see the top of the weirwood tree and its blood-red leaves, glowing in orange hues under the morning sun. Falling leaves tumbled from the interlocking branches, barely letting in gaps of sunshine through. Sir Patrick nodded towards the weirwood tree. She noticed Robb Stark's grey and brown surcoat. His auburn hair was dark under the shade of the laughing tree. He sat with his sword on his lap, honing it with a whetstone using a slow and flat stroke. He seemed to concentrate on his work and for a moment was unaware of their presence. Grey Wind stood up from where he lay and smelled the air before his eyes moved towards Sir Patrick and Myrcella, who both stopped on their track. It was then Robb looked up and saw them. His eyes widened with attention. "Apologies, Your Grace. Princess Myrcella would like to see you," Sir Patrick said. "Is there something wrong, Princess? Rob asked, putting away the whetstone as he rose. He was half shadow under the laughing tree branches. Rob had donned his armor, grey pauldrons on his shoulders and wolfskin tunic underneath a brown gorget with leather strips that held his coat in place, making an X over his gorget. Not a full armor like Southron lords and knights would wear, but enough steel to provide protection without reducing one's agility on the battlefield. She began, suddenly feeling imprudent and nervous to have intruded on Rob's lone time. Leave us. Rob told Sir Patrick and Walton, who both bowed and without a word, retreated to Godswood's entrance. I want to thank you, Your Grace, she said finally, brushing away her embarrassment after they were left alone, out within earshot. I went to visit my uncle yesterday, and I am thankful you give the opportunity to. I am glad you are, Princess, he cuts in, but not impatiently. She must have been blabbering while being so nervous, and she blushed crimson red at the thought. Are you going to battle again? She asked, eyeing his armor. Perhaps I am, he answered. Rob stood up straight as an arrow, and he is a lot taller than she thought. Well, she now knows how tall he was when he came to stand before her, and how warm and strong those arms could be on her shoulders. She blushed at the memory. Does this Godswood here the same as the one in King's Landing? He suddenly asked. For the first time she looked around, reluctantly tearing her eyes off him. I think it is smaller here, she answered. And much more abandoned. More lonely, I guess. But they are always beautiful, in their own way. The Godswood in Winterfell is the largest in Westeros. 3 acres of forest within the walls of Winterfell, Rob said, and she notes a tinge of longing in his deep voice. Our weirwood tree stands over a pool of black water. Even in the coldest winter the pool never freezes. I heard because there's a dragon in the ground, she chirped in, and Rob had to laugh. So they say, he said, sheathed his sword and gestured her to sit under the tree. She sat on a giant root that stretched out from the ground, with Rob sat opposite of her. They stared silently for a while until Myrcella blushed and had to look away to where Grey Wind lay near the Godswood entrance. Do you know I was named after King Robert? Rob asked. You are. She knew Rob's father was best friends with her late father since they were John Arryn's wards. But she never thought that Robert was Rob's namesake. Rob nodded. I was born here in Riverrun. When my father fought beside King Robert in his rebellion, there was pride in his voice. When the war was over, my mother brought me to Winterfell, where I grew up. Well, until Raven came bearing news about my father's imprisonment. I am sorry to hear that, Your Grace, she said meekly. I never offered you my condolences. Lord Stark was a good man. He was. Rob said. And he was also the most honorable man I've ever known. You do resemble him a lot, Your Grace, she said earnestly. He smiled at that. I am truly sorry that my brother murdered your father. Murder? Rob cocked his head. I've never thought I would hear that from you. Why? Because you also think that I am a Lannister through and through. No, because I think you've been shielded your whole life and just swallowed whatever they chose to feed you. You're a princess, after all. Perhaps I am, but I'm learning, she said a bit defensively. You remind me of my sisters. Sansa. Sansa and Arya, both of them. I will take that as a compliment, Your Grace, she said boldly, smiling. Yes, you should, Princess. He, too, replied with a smile. She admitted that she likes seeing him smile. It felt good, and somehow it was easy to talk to him. They may call him king, the king in the north, the king of the Trident, Lord of Winterfell, or whatever title they bestowed upon his shoulders, but to her, she could see him as Rob, who longed for the north and his sisters. Rob reached down to pick at buttercup flowers that grew wild on the Godswood's floor. The glittering yellow petals reflect the morning light, as golden as the Lannisters' lion. He handed the flower to Myrcella, who took it shyly. For a second their fingers brushed to each other, sending warmth that spread instantly to the rest of her body. Buttercup flowers, she said. Yellow, like you, Rob mused, his eyes moved to her golden hair. Did you know that my father proposed your hand for me, instead of Sansa's for Joffrey? She was shocked by the revelation, and Rob's soft lips stretched into a smile that didn't reach his eyes. You didn't know then? But of course, your mother was against it, and King Robert decided to join our houses through Joffrey and Sansa. I think the king thought his best friend's daughter as Queen of the Seven Kingdoms was more prestigious than having you in the cold north. It was an honor, truly, to be betrothed to the crown prince. He sounded almost sincere about it. I think the honor would be mine, your grace, if it happened. She said it without thinking. No. The honor would be mine, princess. Though maybe in another life, he said softly. Do you miss home? Winterfell. Robb searched her eyes, for what, she didn't know, but his bright blue eyes twinkled with the gentleness she started to easily recognize. You think I am fighting this war so they'll sing songs about me? He asked her back. I want to go home. He answered plainly, his voice filled with emotion, and it made her heart ache again. I want the men who follow me to go home. She didn't know what possessed her. Maybe the silence of the gods would, or the sunlight peeking out from behind the leaves made Robb Stark look angry and vulnerable and sad at the same time. She wanted to give little comfort for the young man, that she reached for his hand. At least, she knew she wanted to give him back a little solace he had given her when he caught her crying. Then why don't you? Robb twitched under her touch and she realized perhaps she had said the wrong words. They are enemies, after all. Their families hate and kill each other. Because we will never be safe until the Lannisters are defeated. Because I believe in justice. Of course you are, she said to herself. And I am a Lannister all over, just like your mother said. Robb pulled his hand from her grasp as footsteps were heard stepping on the dry twigs on the ground. Yes, Walton. It's Lady Catelyn, your grace. She has come back. Notes. I'd like to thank Kurt Komatosewski for her kind help on this chapter. She is very much appreciated for a suggestion that I wrecked my mind for lately. Thank you for reading. I hope you enjoyed this chapter. Laughing smiley. XX. Chapter 6. Notes. See the end of the chapter for notes. Chapter text. Catelyn. The Vale won't declare for neither side, the king in the north, the king of Iron Island, the rightful heir of the Seven Kingdoms, nor the king of Highgarden. They despise the boy king on the Iron Throne too, so no, the Lady Regent of the Vale made sure that the Vale would stand clear of any kings and any war for the sake of Jon Arryn's young sickly heir, Robin. At least they won't declare for our enemy. Great Jon Umber grumbled. Robb had gathered the Northern and River Lords in his chamber that noon. The spacious room was crowded with men standing around a large wooden table in the middle of the room, with Robb at the head of the table between Edmure Tully and Roose Bolton. Lady Catelyn looked at her son with heavy feelings. The North along with Stannis Baratheon and the River Lords' support have amassed 75,000 soldiers. Dorne has not declared to either side. If we could give them we are not sending back their prince's betrothed if that is what you are suggesting, mother. Robb replied. Our numbers are not enough to attack Casterly Rock nor King's Landing, Lord Bolton reminded him. And even if we succeed, the King of Highgarden might attack us easily and make us bend the knee again with his fresh 90,000 soldiers. I can see that, my lord. Robb said sharply. And we are not attacking Casterly Rock, yet. What are you going to do, your grace? Robb thought for a moment before he spoke, weighting every word. I know you are hungry for blood, my lords, and Lord Karstark stood straighter at his words. I will give you blood and independence. We will deal with the mountain first, before we set eye to Harrenhal. Did your scout find anything? He turned to Lord Bolton. Getting closer to Riverrun each day, your grace. 3,000 men at arms, will be at Stone Mill village before the sun sets on the morrow. Good. Let him come. Uncle Edmure, did you do as I bid? Lord Edmure Tully stroked his red beard and nodded grimly. Yes, your grace. Farmers are running for the safety of our walls at this very moment. Gregor Clegane, or the mountain that rides, aggressive and lacking self-control as he indulge in murder and rape, have been easy to lure. As per Robb's instruction, Lord Edmure had drawn every Riverlands men at arms from the location that was approached by the mountain. Let him take the mill and the village, Robb had said, and Lord Edmure, after a heated debate he lost to Robb and Brynden Tully, reluctantly agreed. I've sent 2,000 men to die, and I will do it again. I will let the mountain have a mill, a village, or an inn if that means I can have Tywin Lannister's mad dog's head by noon. She gazed at her firstborn, seeing how the softness of his face had long gone. He was not a boy any longer, she realized with sudden sadness. He is 17 now, a man grown. They hushed over the wooden table, a wide map of the Riverlands and its surrounding borders sprawled over small wooden pieces that represent their position and enemies. Maester Vimen handed a scroll to Robb. A raven came yesterday, my lords, Robb said as he opened the scroll in his hand. Stannis and his fleet has landed and taken over Maidenpool from the Lions. We will meet their troops in Harrenhal, and we will carry Tywin's mad dog's head. The men around him cheered. Robb moved a wolf and a trout on the map. Uncle Brynden, you have the honor to lead the cavalry with Lord Karstark. Brynden Tully, famed as the Blackfish, and Rickard Karstark bowed at the notion. Robb looked at the map, considered something, before he lifted and moved another wolf and trout. Lord Sewin and Lord Breckin, you will ride with me. We will meet the mad dog from the western mountains where he'd passed after the stone mill to get to us. Major Sewin grasped his battle axe tightly, Your Grace. My axe and I are honed and ready to serve you. We will have the mad dog's head, Your Grace. Jon Osbrekin said. Robb nodded. We will need his head to sway Dorne to our cause, my lords. Make sure to bring his head. That way we won't lose a valuable hostage, yet we might have struck a pact with the Dornish with that revelation he gazed to her. Robb took another wolf piece, Lord Bolton, take the infantry and meet Tywin's mad dog in the vanguard. They were going to use the flanking maneuver with several variations. She saw that Robb was trying to flank the Mountain and his men by attacking him from 3 sides, at an angle to the enemy's direction of engagement. The pincer movement would be executed by the attacking army, led by Lord Bolton, in front. Both flanks would be led by her son and his companions, while Blackfish and Lord Karstark finished in the rear with their horses. They'd encircled the Mountain's men. Each lord will bring a legion of 3,000 men, while the rest march straight to Harrenhal led by Lady Maege Mormont and Lady Catelyn Stark on his stead, after leaving some of the Riverlord's army to garrison Riverrun. What about the Kingslayer? Edmure Tully asked. And that little princess? All eyes fell on Robb. I won't keep all my treasures in one purse to make it easier for those who would rob me. I will bring the Kingslayer. The princess stays here in Riverrun. Robb said. So it was decided, the strategy, the commanders, even hostages. They will ride before the first light. She chose to sit silently for the rest of the meeting, listening to Lord's advice, Robb's replies and Maester Vimen's report. Seeing Robb so calm and confident leading the war council made Catelyn's heart filled with pride and sadness at the same time. The one at the end of the table should be Eddard Stark, and Robb at his side, learning, listening. They should be in Winterfell, not in the midst of war, far away from home. But didn't they prepare him enough? So much that the first thing he did when the boy king on the Iron Throne summoned him to King's Landing, Robb had said, His Grace summons me to go to King's Landing. I'll go to King's Landing. But not alone. Call the banners. Ever since Robb left Winterfell she had to watch her firstborn become the man he is now. After the shock and anger upon Ned's execution, the North refused to swear fealty to the Iron Throne. They had bent the knee 300 years ago to Aegon the Conqueror and his dragons, but now Targaryens and dragons were history. So they put the bronze crown decorated with 9 black iron spikes shaped like long swords on her son's head and hailed him the king in the north, as she watched. Now even the Riverlords followed him too. She prays gods be good to grant him strength, but most of all wisdom to lead them all. It was Robb's decision to send her on his stead to Dragonstone. Stannis Baratheon is the rightful king of the 7 kingdoms and the enemy of their enemy is their friend, as musing as it was. Ned was killed because of the truth he unearthed about Cersei's children and for his support to Stannis. Honor made them can't swear fealty or declare to Renly as he was the younger brother of Robert and Stannis, even when Renly commanded a bigger deal number of army, backed by the wealth of the Reach. Gods be good, as brooding, stern and single-minded as he was, Stannis is a man of honor himself. Ned has once said that Robert is steel, but Stannis is pure iron, hard and strong but brittle, the way iron gets. Renly was copper, pretty to look but soft. During Robert's rebellion Stannis held Storm's End with only a token garrison against the mighty Tyrell and Redwyne forces for more than a year. I learned a great deal from Stannis, Robb told her the day she set sail to Dragonstone. Stannis held House Baratheon's ancestral seat during Robert's rebellion. Should it fall back then, Robert's supporters would slowly bleed away. who wants to follow a man who cannot defend his own home? I am tasking the Reeds and the Mendalis to guard our land. Stannis is the man we need to take in our side, mother. Father trusts him. He's got ships, though lack of men. I have men, but no navy. We can be ally. Robb was right. A man of little humor, Catelyn could sense Stannis Baratheon was not easily sliding over the law for nobody or nothing. She had her doubts when she sailed to Dragonstone. Stannis has declared himself king, the rightful heir of the Iron Throne, and might have thought Robb was an usurper demanding the freedom of the North. As far as she knew, Stannis was always a man of law. He broke it only once, when he rebelled against the Mad King for the sake of his brother. She had heard it from the hard man himself in Dragonstone, a hard choosing, my blood, or my liege. Stannis told her, his voice a low baritone, standing beside his hand when he received her. My brother, or my king. I don't want the throne, but it is not a question of wanting. The throne is mine as Robert's heir. That is law. After me it must pass to my daughter, unless Lys should finally give me a son. I am king. Wants do not enter into it. I have a duty to my daughter, to the realm. Even to Robert, who loved me but little, I knew, yet he was my brother. The Lannister woman gave him horns and she may have murdered him as well as she murdered Jon Arryn and your husband Ned. For such crimes there must be justice, starting with Cersei and her abominations. I mean to scour that court clean. Stannis had asked if Robb would bend the knee, though, but Catelyn knew the North would have none of it. Independence must be on the table, aside from the safe delivery of Sansa Stark, Ned's and their household's remains, and Ice, the Stark's ancestral greatsword. She had helped Robb sway Walder Free to Robb's cause, and she'd do it again if it helped him take the South to rescue her daughters. Of course Stannis was called Stannis the Manus for naught, as he was harder to sway than the old Lord of the Crossing. If Walder Free had asked Robb to marry one of his daughters or granddaughters with the addition of putting some free boys as wards, Stannis wants the North under his command. Their negotiations were tough as expected, although in the end Stannis and Catelyn agreed that as long as Robb supplied men and maintained peace in his own kingdom, the independence of the North at the end of the war would be considered granted. The reality that Robb succeeded in uniting the Northern and River Lords was a factor of considerations. She had to thank the low-born knight who acted as Stannis's hand though, the white-haired man with sleepy eyes was the one who gave Stannis a second opinion, to see the bigger picture, that finally made Stannis and Catelyn reach an agreement. Catelyn had heard of Robb's plan to bring Dorne to their side through the Mountain's Head. That is not impossible, come to think about it. Dorne has long held their grudge in silence of the brutal murders of Elia Martell and her children. Maybe they stood a chance to win this war, she thought, welcoming a slight hope and courage. Finally when Robb dismissed the lords, and Lady Mormont, to their rest on the eve of battle, Catelyn rose to meet his son at the table. He is still hovering above the map, his eyes furrowed as if trying to find flaws in his plan. Robb, she called softly, and her eldest son looked up. Mother, I thought I've sent you to rest, he said. Is there any news about Arya? When Robb told her that the Lannisters lost Arya the day they murdered Ned, her heart raged with fear of Arya's fate. But she knew Arya, how wild and smart her little girl was, and a glimmer of hope overcame her fear. Robb had secretly sent some of his trusted knights to look for his little sister. They did this quietly so that the Lannisters were not suspicious that they already knew the Queen Regent lost Arya. Ravens came bearing news about the war, but still no Arya. There's outlaws roaming the Riverlands to Westerlands, she said. If they caught Arya. Arya is smart, mother. Even if they caught her, their chances are better if they bring her to us rather than to Joffrey or the Queen. You're right, she sighed. I am so worried of her, alone out there, she trailed off before her tears fell. I've never told you that I'm very proud of you, she said, trying to be strong. She must, for Robb's sake. For all of them. Robb looked surprised. Your father would be too, if he had the chance to see you now. Thank you, mother. We will find Arya and take Sansa home. You grew too fast, my son, it seemed like only yesterday they pulled you out of my womb. Be safe tomorrow. I will see you as soon as I can in Harrenhal, mother. Yes, you must, she said, planting a kiss on her son's cheek before leaving the chamber. Hours have passed, The sky was already dark when she slipped out from the Lord's residence tower and into the castle's yard. Men shouting orders as they prepared to march, horses were brushed and saddled by stable boys. She walked past men holding their swords and put up her hood to conceal her auburn hair. Her son is blood of the north who worshipped the old god. She'd need to pray in the godswood for his safety. The old god will hear her prayer and keep him safe and whole until they meet again. Some of the northern men might seek the weirwood too before they march, so she better not waste more time. The noise began to dwindle as she walked to the abandoned part of the castle that housed the weirwood tree. To her surprise, she saw 3 men already standing by the godswood entrance. Sir Patrick. She recognized one of them as Rob's highborn battle companions. The young man bowed to her. "Good evening, Lady Stark. I hear you've come back from the Vale, my lady." "Yes, sir, just this morning." "I didn't see you in Rob's council earlier," she asked the knight. "Ah, yes, my lady. The king has ordered me to guard Princess Myrcella." "Princess Myrcella, is that her in the godswood?" Patrick Malister nodded, "The same or as her." "Yes, my lady. Been in there for hours." She did find Princess Myrcella kneeling in front of the laughing tree, almost like praying. She didn't try to hide her presence and soon the Southron princess saw her. The girl's green eyes widened at sight of Caitlin and she hurriedly stood and curtsied. "Lady Stark, I didn't see you," she said shyly. "Of course you didn't see me, princess, you have your back towards the entrance." She didn't mean to reply so harshly but the girl didn't seem to mind. Caitlin took a place beside her and she retreated politely to make room for her in front of the tree. "Have you been praying?" She blushed. "Yes, my lady. I heard the king marched on the morrow. And they are busy preparing for battle." She sounded so fragile and for a moment it reminded her of her own children, young and scared and scattered across the continent. Caitlin nodded, though she still couldn't hide her curiosity. "I thought you Lannisters worshipped the faith of the Seven." Myrcella seemed hesitant upon replying. "The king is of the north, my lady." She prayed for Rob, she realized in disbelief. "Are you going to ride with him, my lady?" She looked at her like some lost child and her heart ached. If those eyes were blue, I'd mistaken her as Sansa, she bitterly thought. Or if her hair was dark she'd be like my Arya. "Yes. Do you know what is expected of you?" "Sir Patrick said the king has ordered me to stay in Riverrun." "That is right." She turned to face the weirwood tree. The white bark shone under the moonlight and its blood-red leaves whistled in the wind. The face carved on the tree's bark was smiling at her, teasing the Southron blood in her. Caitlin has never felt at ease in the godswood, as she feels like the old gods knew she was not the daughter of the north. "But my son is," she prayed. "My son is the blood of the first men, and of the north. If you hear me, please. I beg you, protect my son, Rob. Bestowed strength and wisdom upon him. Protect Sansa and Arya for me. Protect Bran and Rickon, I beg you. Let Rob bring back my daughters." The atmosphere was so quiet at the godswood, untouched by the hubbub of people preparing for battle. She almost forgot the presence of other people nearby. When she finished praying, she realized Princess Myrcella was sitting not far from her, on a giant root that stretched out from the mossy soil. "We better get back to the castle now," she said. "Lady Stark, if I may," Myrcella said reluctantly. Her voice was soft and almost unheard. "Yes." The girl took out a small package from behind her coat and handed it to Caitlin. "I might not be able to see the king before he goes to battle, my lady," she said as Caitlin took the package from her. "If it pleases you, please give this to him. I will pray for his safe return, and for this war to end soon." Caitlin opened the package and soon a handkerchief lay in her hand. She had to peer through the godswood dimness to pay attention to the embroidery details, which was a howling grey wolf in exquisite detail. The girl had also embroidered a lion on the other side of the wolf, its golden mane met the wolf's grey in a beautiful burst of white, brown and yellow. "I am sorry for your loss, Lady Stark," the girl continued as Caitlin stared blankly at the handkerchief. "Lord Stark was a good man. I wish things would turn out differently." "You naive girl. Do you honestly think a piece of cloth with our sigil and yours would mend what was already broken? Your brother murdered my husband. Your mother held my daughter hostage. Stannis Baratheon sent ravens to all High Lords of Westeros, announcing Joffrey is neither a true king nor a true Baratheon. Do you know what it makes you? Her words turned out angrier and bitter than she intended. Myrcella stared at her, clearly shocked, and Catelyn had to squeeze the handkerchief to keep herself from throwing it to the ground. You should pray for your own family, because when this ends, gods help them for mercy. She did it. She managed to tear the little girl's feelings in front of her. She is a Lannister, she reminded herself. She is an enemy. But still, as the girl finally recollected herself and curtsied even gracefully though she noticed her eyes gleaming with tears, Catelyn felt ashamed. She should not berated the girl for her family's sins. She clutched the handkerchief in her hand tightly as she made her way back to the castle. Part of her wants to throw the delicate needlework into the hearth, but a small voice inside her forbids from doing it. She stood alone in the spiral staircase leading to her and Robb's chambers in the Lord's Tower. The flame from torches hanging on the stone walls gave enough light when she opened her palm to observe the handkerchief again. The neatness of the stitches reminded her of her own daughter, another hostage. She finally settled her heart and continued towards her chamber, closing the door behind her. Notes. I always loved the idea of Robb working together with Stannis. Yeah though book, Stannis would have none of King in the North thingy, but. Anyways. Sorry I am not a chatter and rarely write notes, crying smiley. I hope you enjoy this one. Thank you for your time. 7 blessings. XX. Chapter 7. Chapter text. Myrcella. She saw Robb Stark and his bannermen riding out of the castle gate. She was laying restless in bed, unable to sleep as the voices from the courtyard echoed loudly. The room where she was put was located in the highest tower and had a wide window overlooking Riverrun's gate. The darkness of the night was split by torches illuminating the sky, and from afar Myrcella could see Robb Stark on his black stallion. Grey Wind was never far from his master's side. Her eyes followed the beast and before Robb kicked his stallion to a gallop, Grey Wind looked up to her direction. Please protect him, she whispered. For a moment she thought the direwolf understood. There has been enough bloodshed from House Stark and she remembers clearly how hatred spilled from Lady Catelyn's eyes every time the older woman laid eyes on her. Men marched out the gate, so many it seemed it won't finish until the sun rises. Their temporary barracks outside the castle had been dismantled, its residents marched to follow their respective commanders. Among them was her uncle, chained and locked inside a horse-drawn carriage. When Sir Patrick informed her that Robb Stark was taking Jaime Lannister with him, she was devastated. What are they going to do with him? Are they going to kill him? She asked, scared with the answer. Well no, I think, Princess. His Grace has said you and the Kingslayer are more valuable alive. She gave in to sleep just before the sun rose and woke up when 2 women put her breakfast tray on the table, startling her. Good morning, she said. As usual they paid her no attention. After breaking her fast, another woman came in to help her clean herself and get dressed. Turns out the woman was the seamstress that Robb had mentioned, who came to measure her body. She did not expect Robb to be serious about his promise to make her new clothes, considering he had been very kind to her. He did not beat her, even going so far protecting her from his bannermen. He, too, did not chain or starve her. What more she could expect? Obviously not new clothes from him. She met Maester Vimen in his chamber regularly, an activity Robb himself permitted. The old Maester has been kind enough to trust her with giving medical aid that every day she'd be found contently in the Maester's tower. She gladly tended the sick and wounded, but wouldn't mind if given other duties. It takes her mind off any intrusive thoughts about the war, her family, and mostly importantly, of Robb Stark. They sat across the table with parchments, bottles of ink and writing quills scattered around them. That morning she was assigned to help make new copies of many old scrolls and manuscripts before they completely rotted away, the information lost forever. Stacks of old scrolls sent dust and decomposing smell whenever she turned a page. Yet she contently copies every word on 2 fresh parchments, drowning in history of the First Men and the Andals, riches of Qarth, the Order of the Maesters. She couldn't imagine how much time, books, and practice every apprentice's had to pass in forging a Maester's chain, and of more of the art of healing. It was when she began to copy folklore stories, that the movement of her hand began to slow down until she stopped completely. Not because she was tired, even though she has been writing for hours now, but because the story she read was so interesting. She did not remember whether her mother or her septa ever told her about it as a child. Apparently not, because she did not remember she had ever known the story of Sultan the Loyal Dog, or the story of the goose that laid golden egg. See something interesting, Princess? Maester Vimen looked at her questioningly, a fatherly smile on his thin lips. I am sorry, Maester, I got carried away. The Maester chuckled. Yes, I can see that. What are you writing just now? Folklores, Maester. Ah, yes, I remembered that was one of the late Lord Tully's daughter's favorites. Lysa's, if my old mind is not mistaken. Lady are in now. The weather was nice, and though she prefers an open window, but Maester Vimen likes to close his chamber's windows, so the wind won't knock off his precious bottles and vials. The Maester's room was filled with hundreds of it, arranged neatly on wooden shelves. His thin and sharp writing marks each bottle, and the room always smelled of sage and salt. When she asked about those fragrance plantations, he told her about medicinal plants and herbs that grow in Riverrun's garden, even in the Godswood, echinacea, meadowsweet, wild bergamot, thyme, all strange but beautiful to her. Here and there she'd look up from the book she copied and ask more questions. The Maester seemed pleased with it. Sometimes when ravens came, she paid close attention to Maester Vimen's reaction, even though the man never said anything to her, hoping a slight expression would tell her what might be written in the brown parchment. After every reading, the Maester neatly folded the paper and put it in a box, tucked away inside a locked drawer. She was tempted to ask for any news from the battlefield but didn't dare. They'd tell her, if anything big happens, right? She visited the September to pray for her family and spent the rest of the afternoon in the Godswood. Its beautiful forgotten little garden and the stillness calmed her, somehow. She loved sewing in the Godswood, which was always bright and airy, a welcome change of her dim stone walls. By the third time she sat on the giant root to sew, she already knew the surroundings. Tall redwoods spread dappled shadows across the pathway, birds sang from hidden nests, and the air was spicy with the scent of flowers that grow on the mossy ground. Buttercup flower was her favorite among all. Hours became days and days changed to weeks. Even Sir Patrick, her most friendly guardian, never told her any news from the battlefield nor the south. She understands they kept her in the blind, a hostage provided with comfort and hospitality, and she should be grateful for it. Yet her heart ached for any news about her family and, a tiny part of it, about Robb Stark. Robb Stark, she said his name quietly to herself as she sewed. She should not forget who he is. Even during their brief time with each other, and she thought she somehow sees the young man beneath his kingly persona, it won't matter in the end. Whoever wins the War of the Five Kings would not wipe clean all the bloodshed between their families. Lady Catelyn was right. How foolish of her trying to believe what is not supposed to happen. He is a Stark, she reminded herself every time she sat on the giant root, sewing or just reading a book. Yet her hand continued to embroider a lone wolf figure. She uses black, grey and white for its fur, and yellow for his eyes. Grey wolf, she said to herself. It was a warm afternoon. Walton and her other guards stood silently at the entrance, out within earshot. Robb Stark, she whispered his name, smiling faintly to the mossy ground and buttercups flowers that grew wildly on the soil. She took a yellow thread and began to embroider a buttercup flower. Yellow, like you, he had said. She took a mental note to tell him a story she read about buttercup flowers. Will he like it? Or will he think I am foolish? He is leading an army, and here I am, stupidly wanting to tell him a ridiculous story I found in old scrolls. No, I shouldn't be thinking about you, Myrcella shook her head. But his name sounds good when she says it, even though quietly, like telling a secret. And she admitted she likes thinking about him. Something flutters in her belly whenever she recalls his bright blue eyes, and how his thick eyebrows furrow in thoughts just a second before he replied to anything. Robb, she whispered again, after glancing nervously to the entrance. Walton and her guards were talking among themselves, paying her no attention. She giggled. No, he is Robb Stark, a voice in her head reminded her. He is riding south to sack King's Landing and kill your brother. Robb Stark is an enemy. Her fingers trembled as she embroidered. Her back began to hurt, but indeed she hadn't felt good these past few days. Mayhaps it's time to call it a day and retreat to her chamber. Myrcella gathered her needles and her threads, putting them into a basket, and stood up. Suddenly a deep pain pierced her waist and in her abdomen, so intense and so sudden that she shook and had to hold on to a wayward branch to stop her from falling, groaning. She heard Walton's approaching boots stepping on dry twigs. "What is it, girl?" he barked, his sword at hand. The man had never bothered to call her with titles, and since the incident with Lord Carstark he became easily agitated. "Nothing, sir," she replied, hand on her stomach. I think I am not feeling well." "I am not a knight," he said gruffly, and sheathed his sword, frowning at her stomach. "I better take you to the Maester, then." "Cannot risk you dying under my supervision, can I?" he grumbled. She smiled at his reply. "I knew someone who would say such a thing." "What?" "Taking you to a Maester." Walton took her arm gently and ushered her from the godswood. 3 Tully guards followed them silently. "No, but someone who said that he was not a knight." "I am lowborn, girl. Father was a farmer." "Nothing like you or other lords and ladies." He rolled his eyes, mocking. She smiled. "Yes, you do sound like him." Walton looked irritated. "Fine then, who is this man?" "Do I know him, eh?" "He is my brother's sworn shield. He is called the Hound." "Oh, him." Walton was not impressed. "I heard about him. And his monster of brother. The king is after that mad dog. Is there any news from the war?" Finally the question came out of her mouth. Walton glanced uneasily behind them, to the 3 Tully guards walking just 2 meters away. He shook his head and they climbed the Maester's tower in silence. Every step she took sent uncomfortable pain to her back and her stomach, and she grimaced. Walton knocked at the oak door, announcing their presence to the Maester. Maester Vimen looked up from a letter he wrote and smiled at them. "Good afternoon, Princess Myrcella. I didn't expect to see you so soon after our session. Can I be of help?" "She's got a stomach bug." Walton answered for her. "Are you?" Maester Vimen raised his eyebrow. He told her to lay down as he checked her pulse. "You do look a bit pale, princess. Is your back hurting?" "It is." "Your lower back?" He pressed gently on her stomach and she cringed. "Yes." "Has this cramping upset you in the past few days?" "Yes." "Princess, how old are you?" "I am 14, Maester Vimen." The Maester mumbled to himself as he rose to find something in his drawer. "She won't die, right?" asked Walton. "Oh Walton, you're very funny." The Maester took a jar of dried leaves. He pinched a little, put it in a chalice and poured hot water from a kettle above the fireplace. Before he handed the chalice to Myrcella, he poured milk. "Here, princess. Careful, it's hot. It won't look good on me if she dies under my protection, Maester." Walton insisted. "No, Walton, she won't die." Maester Vimen huffed. "Drink, princess, it will help soothe your upset stomach." She obediently took a sip, then another, and it sent warmth into her stomach. She feels instantly better, though her back makes her want to lie down again. Once she finished the drink, Maester Vimen patted her shoulder. "You will be all right now. Rest earlier tonight. If the cramps come again, you know where to find me. It is not life-threatening, isn't it?" Walton asked again. "No, Walton, it is not." Maester Vimen answered patiently before ushering them from his chamber. "See you on the morrow, princess. I've got more manuscripts for us to copy." "Thank you, Maester." The sun has not really set, but she decided to retreat to her chamber. Along the way Walton glanced at her, as if he made sure she would not fall dead on the cobblestone. "Thank you, sir, for taking me to Maester Vimen," she said as they ascended the stairs to her chamber. "Name is Walton, girl, not Sumsers. I'd be one when the young wolf or his knights knighted me. Which I hope will be soon," he said. "Of course it only happens if I keep you alive." "All right, then, Walton," she said, not sure if it was polite enough to call him by his name. He seemed quite old with his messy brown beard, a look most northerners have. Walton had a face like he is thinking hard, which makes him a bit unattractive. She wonders if the man ever smiled in his life. If he did, he'd look nicer. Walton shrugged nonchalantly. I am answering to the king if anything happens to you. You seemed very fond of him. He scoffed. All of us do, girl, and to his father before him, before you Lannisters chopped off his head. That again, her heart sank. Everyone wants to remind her of her family's crime. Walton left her in her chamber as that night 4 Tully household guards stood in front of her door. Sleep has not been good to her and she shudders on her bed as the cramps revisited. It became unbearable near midnight and she curled up on her bed. A wolf howled in the distance. She was dreaming of a tall knight in grey armor and fur surcoat, who carries an oak shield decorated with a dire wolf's head. The knight unsheathed his great sword. It was wide across a man's hand. The Valyrian steel blade has a dark and smoky appearance. She couldn't see his face. Danger radiance from the knight as he advanced to her. I am so sorry, she cried. I am so sorry. The knight came at her, the iron crown on his auburn head glistered with blood. She screamed as the knight raised his hand and swung his sword. A piercing pain stabbed her stomach where the tip of the sword was lodged, and something warm ran down her legs. She woke up trembling to the sweet metallic scent that caught her nostrils. As she saw the blood she frantically jumped from her bed and hugged herself tightly, thinking the knight had finally managed to hurt her. It was then when her toe hit the wooden bed frame and she yelped in pain, that she realized the blood was not from her severed torso. It was just her moon blood. Chapter 8. Notes. See the end of the chapter for notes. Chapter text. Catalyn. The ride to Harrenhal had been slow. Not all men were seated on horse and they couldn't travel as fast as they wanted. But it shouldn't be long before they reached their destination. Sir Roderick said they'd reach Harrenhal in 3 more days, weather is good and there should be no obstacles in their way. Catelyn hoped the man was right. They had been on the road for 3 days now, 200 horses, Robb took most of their riders, and more than 7,000 men at arms. There was a reason why Robb and Stannis agreed to combine their forces at Harrenhal. It is because the old burned castle is the biggest in Westeros and in good direction to King's Landing. Tywin Lannister and his army currently take hold of the castle, but Robb and Stannis agree to attack and scatter the Old Lion's forces. A raven found them yesterday and Lady Maege Mormont announced Stannis's forces were preparing to march in Maidenpool. Maege was a short, stout, grey-haired woman and a fierce warrior, whom Robb trusts to lead them to Harrenhal and to Stannis. The she-bear dressed in patched ringmail and her bellowing voice barked orders to her men as they reached the middle of high ground to make camp. Scouts were dispatched and posts and guards were placed before they settled the night. Robb trusted his vassals and it was a good thing, to Catelyn's relief. Along the way she sewed a prayer wheel. This is the 3rd time she made it. Once, she made it for Jon Snow, Ned's natural son when the lad was barely 10 and laying sick of smallpox. The 2nd time, she made it for Bran after he fell from a tower that claimed his legs. Now she made it with Robb, Sansa and Arya in her mind. She was afraid for Robb, fighting in battle against the Mountain, maybe at this very moment. She was crying for Sansa, beaten and humiliated by the man her daughter was betrothed to. She was in constant worry for Arya, lost and never heard of. Please let us come home and forget this horror, she whispered her prayer as she sewed, sometimes stopping briefly to get rid of the tears dripping on her cheeks. Bran and Rickon, too, deep in her thoughts. Her babies were alone in Winterfell and the first thing she'd do after she made sure Robb doesn't need her anymore is to ride hard towards Winterfell. Their supper was as simple as a bowl of stew and mead. Afterwards she joined Sir Roderick, Maege Mormont and other lords in the commander's tent to discuss the situation. They'd wait until their scout comes back with any information about Harrenhal and to send a message to Stannis that they are ready. The Riverlords knew well their land and it should be their advantage. The place they made camp was well hidden by rows of trees and their men stood guard in 3. Maege Mormont will lure the Old Lion from Harrenhal and when Tywin is busy dealing with them, Robb will sneak in the rear to break straight into Harrenhal. They'd just bid their time. They have been lucky so far, so help us gods to keep it, Catelyn thought as she sat beside Sir Roderick, the prayer wheel at hand. She almost finished it. Their camp was dark, Maege Mormont did not allow much torches or bonfires. They were forced to squeeze shoulder to shoulders around a small bonfire every 20 meters. Darkness protected them from lurking eyes. If they cannot see the enemy, it is better if the enemy has difficulty spotting them too. Also there were outlaws for them to be wary. Though small chance those outlaws would dare approaching an army. What was it the Aesars I say? That the night is dark, and full of terrors. Caitlin mused as she clutched her prayer wheel. How true was that? You should rest, Lady Stark. Sir Roderick's kind voice pulled her from her reverie. They are standing in front of her tent. I will place more guards in front of your tent for the night. Thank you, Sir Roderick, and you too, she replied, casting the older man a thankful smile. She lit a candle inside her tent, but the light was too small to keep darkness at bay. At least she didn't alone with her mind in pure dark. In the distance she thought she heard wolves howling, but she was not worried. Wolf, direwolf, even, is the protector and the sigil of House Stark. Wolves won't hurt them. They are a pack. It took 3 days until the first scout came back bearing news that Tywin Lannister had amassed 40,000 men at arms at Harrenhal. He saw they seemed preparing to march, but saw nothing further as he had to fight and thankfully killed 2 Lannister scouts on his way back. Upon hearing the report, Lady Mormont placed archers on each post and checkpoints, if there were spies or scouts coming too close. They could not risk Tywin knowing they were planning to take Harrenhal. And besides, Tywin's 40,000 men at arms were just too many. Tension felt thick among the men, preparing for the worst. Robb has not sent any raven and neither does Stannis. They were put on hold, waiting, and waiting. Until the morning when she finally finished her prayer wheel and put it near her sleeping pallet, that Sir Roderick found her in the tent. Yes, she asked, trying to push back the worst thoughts. A message came today. She hurriedly went with him to the commander's tent, where Mage Mormont and several other lords were already waiting. Message from the king. Which king? There's too many kings right now. Mage smiled. Our king. And Caitlin let out a breath. Midge handed her the small parchment. Passed the fork and cut the lion's claws. We sent most of livestocks for the fish in the Trident. The old lion will return to its den to protect the rest of the house. What, Caitlin was dumbfounded, reading the message. Robb's handwriting was remarkably strong, written with symmetrical lines. It didn't convey much information for fearing being intercepted by the enemy. They are plundering the Westerlands that were left open, Mage explained to her. Killed most Lannisters and captured livestock and sent the cattles back to Riverrun. I am sure the king is in attempt to lure Tywin Lannister away from Harrenhal and leave King's Landing open for an attack. A guard walked into the tent, apologizing. Ladies, lords, he huffed. A scout has returned. Bring him in. The skinny man entered the tent, clearly rode hard all night long to reach them in time. They are moving, he was even still trying to catch his breath. The Lannister host moved from Harrenhal in an attempt to make it to the Westerlands. It seems that His Grace's attack on their land made Tywin move away from the castle, Mage pondered. My lords, tell your men to get ready. This is the signal we've been waiting for. Send riders first, to make sure our path is clear. How many men at arms did you see coming out of Harrenhal? The scout looked nervous. 30,000, milady. At least. We need to send a message to Stannis, and fast. Lady Mormont, what do you think? Caitlin asked anxiously. We are approaching King's Landing, my lady, and if Stannis wants to sit on that iron throne, the she-bear huffed, he better get hurry, time is our biggest enemy right now. I've heard news that Renly's troops are in Bitterbridge already. That boy is playing king. Caitlin reminisced about her encounter with Renly. A young man of 21, handsome and jovial, Renly is loved by many, men and women alike. That was the only trait he had that made him believe he'd be a good king, better than Stannis and Joffrey. The last time she saw Renly was when she visited Ned in King's Landing. Renly was grand and dressed so lordly even she could see the man was not built for war. Put a sword in his hand and Caitlin sure he'd break. What about Robb? She asked the she-bear. He will know what to do, Lady Stark. Besides, the king's order has been clear for us to march to Harrenhal. Which we will do, on the morrow. Do we have enough men? I am sure we do. If the scout is correct, the Lannister forces are now split in two, just like what he hoped for. Mage's smiling ear to ear. Your son is a good tactician. And very lucky, I must admit. Caitlin bowed her head humbly at the she-bear praise, yet I dreaded his position, my lady. Luck is a very thin wire between survival and disaster. Not many people can keep their balance on it, I'm afraid. That's why I prayed every night, for the old god and the new to protect Robb. Victory after victory cemented Robb's ways in front of his followers, but his enemies might grow bolder to cast him down. Caitlin shuddered at the thought. Is she being paranoid, or is it her instinct trying to tell her something? Robb rode into war surrounded by loyal bannermen and 30 highborn knights at his side, acting as his unwritten Kingsguard. He should be safe, he should be. Another raven found them near dusk. Dark wings, dark words, Ned once whispered to her. A king was dead, and to her relief, she hates herself for feeling it because she knew the man was actually a good one and should not have died so soon. It was not Robb, or Stannis. It was Renly Baratheon. What will happen, then? Lord Mouton asked. I will ride to Bitterbridge. Caitlin offered. But those lords and their armies are now leaderless. They cannot return their fealty to the Iron Throne. They are the Stormland's bannermen. Swore an oath to Lord of Storm's End, whose name is Baratheon. Stannis is the only Baratheon left. Caitlin knew it was the only right thing to do. Thousands of men at arms to Stannis and Robb's side is a very appealing idea. She hates herself more for silently thanking the old gods and the new for Renly's sudden and mysterious death. The king's order was clear, Lady Mormont. Caitlin cuts in, please. I knew what my son had ordered us to do. Just by this morning you reminded me of it. But now I see an opportunity to bring more men to our cause. I shall ride to Bitterbridge on the first light to meet Renly's bannermen. I cannot send many men with you, Lady Stark. Sir Roderick and 20 good men of my house will suffice. It won't take long to reach Bitterbridge from here, my lady. You will be too close to King's Landing. Mage seemed hesitant. Caitlin smiled. I will do whatever it takes to get my son to win this war. A cruel dusk wakes Caitlin from sweet dreams of happy family life. She was weary of riding and being strong, but she could not allow herself to be weak. Not today, and not this time. And so she rode at the first light. Wind blew cold on her face and she shivered despite the heavy cloak she wore. She did not know what awaited her in Bitterbridge, but she knew she had to seek them. Her party includes some of the best Winterfell men and 5 lordlings, Sir Wendell, Sir Winfrey, Lucas Blackwood and Robin Flint, to add weight and honor to her negotiations with Stormend's vassals. Raven was dispatched to Stannis, informing of her travel to Bitterbridge. It was a castle in the Reach, controlled by Tyrells of Highgarden. Renly was married to Lord Tyrell's daughter, gaining military advantage. It took her 4 days of heavy riding, and when she finally reached a windmill where the Rosa Road crosses the Mandea, a mounted man with 20 men who later introduced himself as Sir Colan of Green Pools intercepted her. The man seemed wary of her and almost showed no welcome gesture. Yet for the sake of the king in the North Spanner and pure curiosity, he led them to what was left of Renly's camp. It was immense, though Caitlin saw nearly half of the men already departed to their respective lords' castles. She didn't see any of Tyrell's banners. What was left of us, Sir Colan admitted. We're leaving for our land when we saw you approaching. Most of us were gone now, and the Tyrells, well, they bent the knee to the Iron Throne, now. To the Lannisters, Caitlin thought, afraid she might come too late. What happened to King Renly, sir? Caitlin asked, knowing that if she used the right word to address the late Renly Baratheon, his men at least wouldn't be offended. They dismounted at the center of the camp where what was left of Renly's royal tent erected. Assassin, my lady, he almost looked ashamed. Some believed it was sent by the Lannisters, though we didn't capture him. Slit the king's throat inside his tent and slew 2 of his rainbow guards. Sir Colan shook his head in disbelief. The Tyrells took Lady Margaery and left last night, to King's Landing to bend the knee. Only the Fossoes and the Florents remain in the Reach. Sir, I will need to speak to these lords, in the name of Robb Stark, the king in the north, and Stannis Baratheon, the rightful king of the Iron Throne. Caitlin herself heard her voice tensed. We don't have enough time. If you will kindly assemble these lords and ladies of what was left from King Renly's army, I'd be very grateful. Sir Colan looked at her for a moment but then nodded his head, to Caitlin's relief. Less than an hour later she joined Sir Colin in the royal tent, looking at uneasy faces of Fossoways, Florents, Conningtons, Carrolls, Hasties, Gowers, and many others. They were leaderless now, kingless, even, and have not declared to neither side since Renly's death. She realized most of Stormend's vassals were angry at the possibility of Renly being killed by Joffrey. They did not want to swear allegiance to the Iron Throne. Once Catelyn reminded them of the last Baratheon waiting in Maidenpool, ready to strike the Lannisters to take the throne, she gained favor almost immediately from them. Stannis won't be happy, but he will thank her nonetheless for bringing in more men to his cause. Two large houses of the Reach, the Fossoways and Florents, were not easily persuaded, though. Just when things were heated up, finally House Florents agreed to join Stannis' cause just because Stannis' wife is a Florent. Why didn't you think of it when you chose Renly's side? Catelyn thought but kept her tongue in check. Two ravens flew that night to find the king in the north somewhere in the Westerlands, and another to find Stannis in Maidenpool. She waited until dawn came, and when its blue hues appeared in the dark sky, Sir Winfrey helped her mount her mare. Trots turned to gallops as soon as they left the Maida, and soon they were into a vast savanna near the Blackwater Rush. Once they reached Stony September they decided to make camp for 2 nights, regaining strength and honing their weapons. It was there when Grey Wind found their party. She breathed a sigh of relief upon seeing the direwolf, realizing Robb's army must be less than a night ride from them. They stayed for another night waiting for him. I told you to ride to Harrenhal, Robb said, when on the 3rd night his troops found their camp. Good to see you, too. I bring more men. Robb couldn't hide his smile. I can see that. They would hug each other if not Robb's men staring at them. Tens of Stormend's vassals' standards flipping in the wind. Their lords knelt upon seeing Robb and his giant direwolf, half afraid and half shocked to witness such a beast now almost as tall as a horse. Even Catelyn realized her son had grown taller in the past few weeks. He was sporting a short, polite beard cropped close to the face, perfectly befitting the title of king in the north. Robb found her in her tent that night. I need you to do something, mother, he said, his voice low, and she knew what he would ask of her. It was the only reason her son came to her unscathed. You know I will do whatever you asked me to. 4 men came with Robb, carrying a large wooden box sealed with wax. What is inside the box? Though she thinks she knew the answer. The mountain's bones, Robb answered. Which I need you to deliver to Dawn. I cannot trust anyone else but you. I will do it. I know you must be exhausted. I said I will do it. Anything necessary for us to wipe clean every Lannisters from this world. And to get your sisters back, Catelyn firmly replied. We are supposed to meet in Harrenhal, but your impromptu travel when you received Renly's death makes us to meet earlier in here, mother. I hope you don't regret it. I don't. Thank you. I will leave early on the morrow. Be safe, Robb. And you, mother. Everything she did, she does so for her family. Like her house words, family. Duty. Honor. Speaking of honor. The Kingslayer was locked inside a barred cell on the back of a wagon. His neck, ankles and wrists are bound with rope and chains, to her satisfaction. 2 men standing guard near the wagon, and Catelyn couldn't help but stare at the now dirty, skinny prisoner sitting silently inside his cell. He used to be dashingly handsome, or so she remembered from his visit to Winterfell some years ago when King Robert asked Ned to be his hand. Jaime seemed aware of her stare because suddenly he looked up, and a set of green eyes looking back at her defiantly. A smirk crossed his handsome face, which was now full with dirty scraggy greying beard. Going somewhere, my lady, he called to her. Catelyn knew she better to walk along to her mare, yet her eyes fixated at him. What? You're now too honorable to speak to me. Now that you're the mother of a king. Don't speak of honor to me, she almost spat, glaring at the Kingslayer with all hate she could muster. You have no honor. Oh, I have, why, he replied cheerfully, as if he was not bound and chained and they were just talking casually in some lord's great hall. Honor. I defended my family. I only lay with one woman whom I love so dearly, but how about you, my lady, or your late husband? Isn't it ironic the man they deemed honorable brought home a bastard? A reminder that your honorable husband fucked a whore. Lady Stark. It is time to go. If not for Sir Roderick's firm tone behind her, she'd strangled the Kingslayer with his own guts. "Where are you going, Lady Stark?" "Dorne, perhaps." Jaime called her again. "Sending those snakes some nice souvenir. Are you looking at me to say goodbye?" She could see bruises, old and new, scars that began to scab in the Kingslayer's body. Even his left eye was swollen. "The men have not treated him so well." "Did they beat you?" "Well, a man or two doesn't seem to like me. That old Lord Karstark, too. You killed 2 of his sons. They were on my way to kill your son. Any knight would have done the same. You are no knight. You have forsaken every vow you took," she said coldly. "Ah, so many vows. They make you swear and swear. Defend the king, obey your father, protect the innocent, and defend the weak. But what if your father despises the king? What if the king massacres the innocent? It's too much, Lady Stark. You are a man with no honor, Kingslayer." Kingslayer? And what a king he was. "Here's to Aerys Targaryen, the second of his name, Lord of the Seven Kingdoms, Protector of the realm, the last Targaryen, and to the sword I shoved in his back." He began to laugh and choke on his own saliva, spitting the drool to his beard. My niece. Myrcella," he said after his laugh subsides. "Are you going to trade her for your daughters?" "Your sister doesn't have Arya," she said to herself, but managed to remain calm. "It is none of your concern, Kingslayer. Do to me as you like, but don't hurt her. You seem so fond of your sister's daughter." "She is my niece, what'd you say?" His chains rattle as he tries to move. "Like you, I also will do everything to keep my blood safe. It is not my decision concerning your daughter, Kingslayer." "Yes, don't you think Stannis will be silent knowing that Cersei's children are yours?" She raised an eyebrow at the Kingslayer, who tried to jump at her but caught by the chain wrapped around his neck. He fell before he even could get more than an inch from where he was tied. Sir Roderick and his guards unsheathed their swords in unison. "It is the king's decision about her, and about you, as a matter of fact. If he wants to give your daughter to wolves or horses, that is none of my concern." "You," he screamed. "I will kill you. And your son," he yelled and spat and cursed, but Catelyn already turned and walked towards her mare. She could hear the Kingslayer's screams from behind her. His anger shook the iron bars he was tied to. "The Kingslayer is not one to be messed with, Lady Stark," Sir Roderick said softly as he helped her mount the mare. "I don't, Sir Roderick. I only told him what he needed to hear." Her entourage mounted their horses and together they trotted from the camp. 2 black horses pull a wagon with the mountain's bones, and inside Catelyn's robe was a letter from the king in the north for the Prince of Dorne. Notes. Credit. Luck is a very thin wire between survival and disaster, and not many people can keep their balance on it. Quotes by Hunter S. Thompson, the founder of Gonzo Journalism Movement. Used some dialogue from the series. Chapter 9. Chapter text. Myrcella. Where do dead men go when they die? Maester Vimen looked up from his parchment with a wonder look. "Well, the Faith of the Seven didn't actually say, and obviously we never had the dead to tell the tale. So there is no afterlife, after death." Maester Vimen put down his quill with a smile. "If we do good deeds and keep our prayers close, you shouldn't fear what is surely coming for all of us, Princess." Myrcella smiled. "Of course, Maester. I was just curious." "Curiosity is what fueled us to grow, Princess. Embrace it." They sat across each other, still making copies of old manuscripts. Piles of dusty scrolls were getting low and Myrcella was optimistic they'd finish it before the day was over. People who were injured and need stitches are now in good condition, and most who come were people with sore throats and flu. She couldn't help much, and Maester Vimen forbade her to be in the infirmary, fearing her to contact any disease. He taught her a little about medicine and healing though. How about the old gods? The only religion that might have explicit belief in life after death is Arla, or known as the Lord of Light. That is a prominent god in Essos, Maester Vimen responded. The god of light, she said in awe. I've heard about it from some knight with a flame sword in King's Landing. I am sure you do. But then, the religion itself is basically unknown here. They believe after our death the soul leaves its body to, the maker, Allah itself, and so they preserved the physical body of the deceased. But the process is not very common to be acted upon. How was it? Well, a priest or priestess of Allah inserted a hook through the nose to pull out the deceased's brain. They also remove all internal organs but leave the heart inside. The body is then washed with spices and wine to keep further decay at bay. And the deceased body will be preserved. It seemed so. Sometimes the body's preserved so well it looks like they are just sleeping. Mursala's eyes widened at the explanation. How are your cramps, princess? Getting better, thank you, Maester. A few days ago she asked for a potion to reduce discomfort due to her moon blood. This was the second time she had it, and she was embarrassed to remember how panicked it made her the first time. Her mother should be by her side in this situation, sharing experiences and giving womanly advice. She would even welcome Lady Caitlyn's presence, but she was alone. When the maid saw bloodstains on her bed and her nightgown, they looked at each other silently and took her to Maester Vimen. By the second time her moon blood came it was not as frightening as the first time. She had prepared mentally and technically, so the mess was not as bad as her previous experience. It still brought her cramps, though, which the Maester said was normal and expected. She opened her mouth to ask more questions when a raven squeaking noisily from behind a window, clawing on the glass to get in. Maester Vimen hurriedly opened the window and let the raven in. Tied on its leg was a small parchment, and as soon as the message was untied the raven flew to the bird stand. Mursala took out a bag of corn to feed it. Direwolf, Maester Vimen muttered, breaking the seal to read the message. Was that from Rob? She almost said, but held her tongue mid-sentence. From the young wolf, Maester Vimen confirmed as he read. They reached Hareng Al a few nights ago, he mumbled. Light casualties, well that's good to know. He stopped, looking up to her, and her heart pounded faster. The look on his face was not very happy, but a concerned one. Maester Vimen, she asked. It's your uncle, he said, hesitating to tell. But she knew he had to. Something Rob's written on the letter was meant for her. No. Please don't. Gods, please don't let him die. The king in the north won the Battle of the Fords. He had reached Hareng Al and joined forces with your uncle, Stannis Baratheon. However, he cleared his throat. Yes, she asked, afraid. Jaime Lannister was injured. The king ordered you to ride for Hareng Al as soon as his message was received. I will need to inform Lord Tully. It was a blur. Edmure Tully consulted briefly with Maester Vimen before telling the servants to pack her belongings, not that she has many. She left Riverrun that very day escorted by Walton, Sir Patrick Mallister, who was happy to return to the battlefield, and some household guards lent by the Riverlords. One moment she contentedly sat in the Maester's chamber inhaling the sweet salty scent with fresh parchment under her palm, and a moment later she found herself settled behind Sir Patrick's back on his grey stallion. She was told that for the sake of safety they'd ride hard, stopping only once in High Heart to rest. High Heart was a very tall hill sacred to the children of the forest in the Riverlands. Around its crown stands a ring of more than 30 weirwood stumps. The hill was considered a safe place due to its height, compared to the very flat surrounding land. It is nearly impossible to be approached unseen, and soon her entourage dismounted. She could sense the power of the place, eerily silent but comforting like the Riverrun's forgotten gods would. Walton never took his eyes off her, glaring and rolling his eyes whenever she tried to engage him in conversation. The man must have wanted his knighthood really bad, that he put up with her for so long. Even though her guards treated her decently, she was watched night and day. Before someone helped her dismount, Walton always made sure to tie her wrists to his using a long rope. Is that necessary? She overheard Sir Patrick asked Walton. Walton replied, glowering at her. Better than she try to escape when we sleep, my lord. The rope was long enough for her to wander 5 feet away from Walton to make water. She still felt violated somehow, relieving herself as Walton grumbled and tugged the rope from behind the bush, telling her to hurry up non-verbally. The trip took them only 2 days, considering they rode their horses like madmen. When the slender figure of Hareng Al towers that had burned out hundreds of years ago began to loom in the distance, she felt nervous. As the stories told, Hareng Al is indeed a huge castle, the largest one in all Westeros. It looked bigger than the Red Keep itself, but her mind might have failed her as she began to forget the details of her home. Even when Harren Al is already within sight, her entourage refused to slow down before they breached into its safe perimeter. She saw a flash of grey running next to Sir Patrick's horse, and Myrilla realized it was Grey Wind. The stallion shrieked by the sudden appearance, but Sir Patrick is a skilled rider, he didn't have difficulties maintaining his pace. She felt at ease looking at the direwolf, who in 2 moons' turn seemed to grow bigger. Its terrifying figure running so near to them, the orange sun shone on its fur. It was a magnificent sight. Harren Al outer post consists of trenches with pickets patrolling the perimeter. Robb also placed guards posts and hundreds of tents lined up in front of the castle to house thousands men at arms. The men parted to give way to their galloping horses. Riders coming through. 2 sigils flutter in the wind, Stark's direwolf and Baratheon's crowned black stag. She noticed her uncle's sigil now enclosed within the fiery red heart of Lord of Light. Sir Patrick, welcome to Harren Al Esquire, a servant and 3 stable boys are waiting for them in the yard. As soon as the scout saw you approaching, the king was waiting. If you will follow me. Sir Patrick nodded, and Princess Myrcella. She will be escorted to her chamber, sir. Very well, then. Myrcella was about to ask about her uncle when Sir Patrick excused himself, and she was left with Walton and the servant girl. The girl bowed her head in respect. She was easily pretty, with brown long hair she secured into a mangled bun, high cheekbones and full lips. She almost laughed when she caught Walton staring at the servant girl, his eyes almost fell from its sockets. Milady, my name is Pia. If it pleases Milady, I am here to take you to your chamber. Oddly the girl covered her mouth as she spoke. Thank you, Pia. Harren Al has 5 towers of dizzying size, each one equally with monstrous curtain walls. The walls were incredibly thick, and she was put in the upper floor in the Tower of Dread. It was not a pleasant name. It's okay, milady, it's just a name. Pia assured her upon seeing her reaction. People would say ghosts of Harren and his sons roamed this castle, but no, milady. I've lived my life here and never saw any ghost. She smiles reassuringly, and Myrcella nodded, thankful for the friendly servant. Pia opened a wooden door to her chamber, which was built on a scale that would be more comfortable for giants than humans. It was huge and plain, as the rest of the castle seemed too big to be handled properly. After making sure that she was attended properly by Pia and some other chambermaids, Walton took his leave to stand guard in front of her room. A wooden tub was brought in and Pia helped her discard her cloak and gun. It felt nice to soak herself in clean warm water, and Pia even washed and brushed her hair afterwards. It's been so long since someone helped her with her golden curls, which now had grown to her waist. She was used to its length now, despite her mother never letting her hair grow long past her chest. What are you, a peasant that cannot afford a hairdresser? She could hear her teasing laugh from the back of her head. I've never seen a hair so yellow like you, milady. Pia remarked as she took a comb to brush her curls. Lannister gold, they say. Now would you like a southern braid? You can do it, she was surprised. Well, I can try, would you? She thought for a moment and shook her head. I've forgotten how I look with that heavy braid. I think I prefer the northern hairdo, if you can, as it is simpler and easier. No one braids my hair in Riverrun until you offer it. Thank you, Pia. My pleasure, milady. Pia continued to brush her hair until it shone before she made a half-twist fishtail braid on each side of the younger girl's temples, twisting it to the back of her head and securing it with hairpins. She let the rest of Myrcella's hair hang loosely. Afterwards, the servant took out several dresses from the chest Walton carried into the room, containing Myrcella's clothes. She chose to wear a greenish-white gown made of soft fabric, long and loose. The fabric was simple, obviously not as fancy as what she used to wear in King's Landing. She liked it though, having preferred practicality over luxury. I wish I have hair like yours, milady. Pia sighed as she helped Myrcella into her gown, shifting the golden locks to Myrcella's shoulder so she could tie the corset. Just like your uncle, Jaime Lannister. Oh, I remembered perfectly when the old king gave him his cloak, he was so handsome in all white. I was a slip of a girl that time. Not that he is not handsome now, after what they did to him, comma. Did you see my uncle here? Myrcella turned so fast it caught Pia unaware. She saw the reason why the servant girl always covered her mouth whenever she spoke. Something, or someone, seemed to have smashed at least 5 of her front teeth. The servant quickly covered her mouth again. Pia Myrcella gasped. Pia looked away, ashamed. What happened? I'm fine, milady, it just. I haven't used people to see me, like this. Who did that to you? The mountain, she whispered, and both girls shuddered at the name. When your grandfather took residence here and brought that monstrous man. I am truly sorry. Guilt, anger and shame squeezes her heart every time she hears the atrocities of her grandfather's bannerman. No. It was my fault. I was speaking when he wanted silence. He hit me with his mailed fist. Almost broke my nose too, but thankfully not. The servant looked down. It was not a reason to assault you just because he can. I am truly sorry. Pia shook her head. The king in the north has avenged me, milady. He made sure that the beast won't do harm anymore. The servant smiled at the memory, forgetting to cover her mouth. I hope I am not a disappointment to you, milady. I always wanted to be a handmaid. Her heart softens for the servant girl. Pia has every reason to hate her, she is a Lannister after all. Her grandfather's man brought Pia shame and pain, yet she still wanted to put her service on her willingly. I am very happy to have you, Pia. They exchanged smiles and Myrcella remembered what Pia had mentioned earlier. You spoke of my uncle Jaime Lannister. Do you know where he is? He is in another tower, milady, near Qyburn's chamber. He was feverish the day they brought him here. Did you know what happened to him? Milady, I am not sure I am allowed to, Please tell me, Pia. Glancing at the door and noticing they were alone in the big chamber, Pia let out a breath and stared at the floor. Beaten, I heard he tried to escape, milady. I think he made it, because Locke boasted how he caught the Kingslayer, and, she hesitated. I think it's better if you don't hear this from me. What did they do to him? Did they hurt him? The servant brought her food and a glass of mead, but Myrcella did not feel like eating. Apparently she had to wait to hear the news directly from Robb Stark, or someone who is willing to tell her what really happened. Hours later she finally got what she wanted when supper was cleared from her table. A knock was heard and Pia hurriedly opened the door to show Robb standing at the other side. Princess, he said, as she curtsied. I came to see if you have settled in your new chamber. I have, your grace. Thank you, she replied, and she dared to look Robb Stark in the eye. His bright blue eyes that sometimes came to her dreams sending tingling feelings within her. He has the most beautiful eyes she ever laid eyes on, which shone intensity, honesty, and gentleness. He appeared more lean and muscled under his jerkin, or was it just her imagination? His face is the kind that would stop a maiden on her tracks, solemn and defined, hard yet gentle. Any woman would be lucky to be his queen. And what did he say? That Lord Stark had tried to betroth Robb to her, rather than Sansa to Joffrey. She imagined another life which such betrothal took place. His pale, thin lips framed by beard cropped close to the face kissed her under the shadow of a laughing tree as he cloaked her with his coat of protection. No. What was I thinking? She had to avert her eyes from him, before it betrayed her mind. May I know what happened to my Uncle Jaime, please, your grace, she meekly asked. Please take a seat, Robb said, and as they settled down Pia moved around to pour them mead. After the servant filled their cups, Robb nodded his thanks and dismissed her. Myrcella waited patiently for him to continue. The Kingslayer tried to escape, Robb finally said. It happened after the Battle of the Ford. We slain many Lannister men that day, sparing only one. Alton Lannister, if you knew him. She didn't. Apparently, Sir Alton's mother is a lesser branch of Lannister. We didn't have enough pens to hold prisoners, and the night before we departed, he was put with the Kingslayer. It was a mistake, Robb sighed apologetically, or so she thought. The Kingslayer beat him repeatedly with his shackles, killing Sir Alton, to distract his guard into his cell. No. Myrcella gasped. He also killed the guard, strangled him to death, before escaping into the night. Lord Bolton's hunters found him the next morning. Robb paused. Myrcella didn't like where this was going, especially when Pia had mentioned Locke earlier. She dislikes that man. Can Can I see him? Rob exhales. He is not in the best mood. Silence came between them as she processed his words. Did you order Lord Bolton's hunters to hurt him? Her voice trembled. No, came his reply. But you didn't tell them not to hurt him, either. When I sent for you, I thought the Kingslayer wouldn't make it. But then last night he overcame his fever and Coburn said he'll survive. You were afraid you will not have any valuable hostage if he was dead. He lost his sword hand. The news startled her. Her uncle had been a passionate knight. He was the youngest to don his Kingsguard cloak and Myrcella knew he took pride in it. People called him the Kingslayer but they didn't know him like she does. Behind closed doors he'd tell Tommen and her stories about Valor, knights and their maidens, favors and gallantry. Jaime indulged her in such stories and to her he is the epitome of a knight in shining armor. When she asked him then why he killed the Mad King, his eyes had been shone with sadness. My princess, he said that time, maybe when she was still a girl of 7 or 8 running to find him after she learned how the court whispered Kingslayer behind her beloved uncle's back. It was not a good story. You wouldn't want to know it. I want to. You are my knight, uncle. Why did they call you that? If I trust you with my secret, will you guard it truly? With my honor, she had replied solemnly, and her uncle smiled. Have you heard about wildfire? The Mad King was obsessed with it. Yes. The Mad King loved to watch people burn, the way their skin blackened and blistered and melted off their bones. He burned lords he didn't like. He burned hands who disobeyed him. He burned anyone who was against him, and before long half of the country was against him. Aerys Targaryen saw traitors in every corner. So he had his pyromancer place caches of wildfire all over the city, from the slums of Flea Bottom to beneath the September of Baelor. Under people's houses, stables, taverns. Even beneath the Red Keep itself. Rhaegar Targaryen has fallen in the Trident, and my father, your grandfather, arrived in the capital with the whole Lannister army at his back, promising to defend the city against the rebel. Sadly, I knew him better than that. He's never been one to pick the losing side, and I told the Mad King as much. I urged him to surrender peacefully, but the king didn't listen to me. So we opened the gates and my father sacked the city. That was not something I was proud about. Once again, I came to the king, begging him to surrender. But, she remembered he had been silent for a moment, searching for the right words. She sat quietly, transfixed to hear her uncle's story. But he told me to bring my father's head. Then he turned to his pyromancer. Burn them all, he said. I was asked to kill my own father and stand by while thousands of men, women, children burned alive. So I forsake my oath, to make sure that didn't happen. Do you understand now? She reached to his cheek then, tears streaming down her eyes upon the revelation. She had not told a soul about it, though she despised every time she heard Kingslayer was mentioned. Her beloved uncle is her hero, her true knight. He had lived with the shame for more than 15 years and had his honor spat upon, when in fact he'd been a hero for preventing mass murder. And now he lost his sword hand. You will be able to visit him on the morrow. Rob's voice pulled her from her reverie. Thank you, your grace, for your generosity. He stood up and she followed suit, thinking that the young wolf was done talking to her. Rob studied her face for a moment. When his eyes slowly descended from her face to her neck, then looked at her from head to toe, Myrcella had to look away to hide her blush. It seemed like he was taking her in like she did when he entered her room. She was grateful his gaze didn't linger in an uncomfortable place. Do you like the dresses? He asked, to her surprise. I do, your grace. Thank you. He smiled. I am glad you didn't get hurt in battle, your grace. I prayed for your safe return. She meant every word, not just to fill the silence between them. Is that so? I know you are fighting for a good cause. First for your father, your siblings, then for your people. He exhales quietly. Don't we all? My brother doesn't. Rob never waved his eyes off her. I am glad you seemed well, princess. I heard what you did in Riverrun. Maester Vimen told me in his reports that you helped around a lot. You seem to like being a healer. Maybe I've decided to be one, someday, she said wistfully. Going to Citadel, forging my Maester's chains. Or build a small house where all people are welcome to seek shelter and medical aid. Easier for the latter. Robb acknowledged. If you were like your king brother, it'd also be easier, too. He gave her a tired smile. Good night, princess. It is good to see you again. She chose not to press further what he meant. Good night, your grace. He was already at the door, ready to yank it open when he stopped and turned his head to look at her from his shoulder. She waited for him to say something, anything. They stared at each other that felt like eternity, before Robb finally opened the door and disappeared behind it. When Walton escorted her the next morning to visit Jaime, the man lay in a big bed with his eyes staring at the ceiling. The room was dark and smelled of urine. Jaime blinked a few times, trying to focus his gaze on her face when she called to him. Are you well? Jaime asked softly. Strength has gone from his voice. Stop asking me that whenever I visit you, she hushed him. His skin warm under her touch, sweat soaked his forehead. Myrcella took out a handkerchief and wiped Jaime's face. Are you in pain, uncle? Do you need milk, Poppy? No, no poppies, he hissed. I have cleaned the infected flesh. A strained croaked voice of an old man was heard from across the room. A man revealed himself from the shadows. His thin frame was badly clothed under a black maester robe, but he had a fatherly smile on his old face when he looked at her. Though the man wore a maester robe, but he didn't wear any chains. I intended to amputate part of his arm, but he didn't want me to. Strong man, and a suspicious one. Doesn't want to drink a drop of poppies out of fear I'd still take his arm. Who are you? She inquired. You are not a maester. The old man nodded. Child. My name is Coburn. I used to be one, though. The Citadel stripped me of it. How is he now? She asked. He will live. I just changed his bandage. Now we just wait for the wound to dry. Myrcella. Jaime called, and she turned her attention to her uncle. Jaime raised his right arm, and to her horror she saw no part of the wrist down. Only a stump, concealed under his long-sleeved tunic. I will leave you too, then. Coburn walked towards the door. What happened? They hurt you. Doesn't matter what they did to me. They told me you were trying to escape. Why? Are we alone? She looked around and nodded. Yes. They told me they'd hurt you, he replied, shuddered at something he left unsaid. I've to take you out of this place, he hissed, trying to rise from the bed. His attempt failed miserably as he groaned in pain and fell back to the bed. There was a clinking sound and she noticed Jaime's feet were chained to the bedposts. No, the king treats me well. I don't want you to do something foolish, uncle. It is only a matter of time, Myrcella, Jaime sighed. Either we escaped, or waited until the war is over, doesn't matter which side won. If you stayed here, they'd hurt you for their last resort. This boy has been lucky, Jaime laughed, a hoarse and bitter one. With Renly dead and with the mountain's bones, he's trying to bring dawn to Stannis. Uncle Renly is dead, she trembled. A pretender king, He has always been kind to me, she said with sadness, recalling the youngest brother of King Robert. Jaime gripped her with his left hand. Myrcella, he whispered, dragging her to his chest. His haggard breath caught her ear. Everyone here will try to hurt you to get to your family. Don't let them. Can you find yourself something sharp? Uncle Jaime, His grip tightens. Can you, he asked urgently. A knife. Or some sort. Anything sharp and small enough to conceal in your dress. Always bring it everywhere with you. We're in the wolf's den. I can't protect you, his voice filled with shame, looking at his stumped hand. Myrcella cupped his uncle's face that is now gaunt and pale. You always worried about me, she tried to smile to soothe him, but instead her words made Jaime pull her closer. Fear emanating from his green eyes. The same eyes as mother, and as her. They told me they'd rape you, he suddenly whispered. These northern savages, they'd hurt you. Even that Honorable Catelyn Stark said she didn't care what they'd do to you. Was that what made you try to escape? To protect me? That's what I tried to do, ever since you came into this world. Jaime tried to laugh. Your grandfather raised an army to pillage the Riverlands because you are a Lannister. I will keep you safe because you are of my blood. Robb Stark killed the Mountain. He destroyed your grandfather's army. He took Harrenhal. He will take Stannis to your brother. The war that Joffrey started. He killed Lord Stark. She snapped at the mention of her vile brother. All of this won't happen if Joffrey is not king. If only Tommen is king. What a jape gods have. Robb treated me good, uncle. He is honorable. I don't want you to do something that might hurt you further. No, I am alive and drunk of sunlight. He caressed her head with his left hand. Jaime loved her curls. That Stark boy just hasn't had the chance to hurt you, that's all. Robb is kind and he is fighting for his people. Listen to me. Listen to me carefully. He jerked her arm to him with surprising strength and she whimpered. Jaime releases her immediately. These are people who want to see us hurt and they may use you to get to us. To your mother and your brother. Uncle Jaime, After Harrenhal your grandfather will know this war is not something we'd win on the battlefield. What do you mean? The door cracked open before Jaime could answer. Walton stood by the door and she knew her time was up. Jaime gently pulled her one last time to what she felt was a hug. Remember what I've told you, he whispered. The only thing that brought her peace was Harrenhal's Godswood, though it no longer housed any weirwood tree. It is walled and spread 20 acres, located across the ward from where the barracks hall and the armory are. It has a small stream running through it. What happened to the weirwood tree? She asked Pia when she settled on a big stone by the stream. She turned her gaze to its skeletal branch, crooked and dark as charcoal in the white shafts of daylight. Aegon and his dragons, Pia answered, looking at what used to be a 3,000 years old weirwood tree. When he burned this castle 100 years ago, milady. The servant stood a foot away, with Walton facing the entrance. What a pity, she sighed. Come sit with me, Pia. Pia looked surprised and she had to smile. No one talked to me in Riverrun. Well, except for Maester Vimen and Walton. She laughed when Walton rolled his eyes. They'd stuck in its sockets one day. I am grateful for you. Come. They sat together on the stone, enjoying the warm sunshine. Plants grew close to one another, trees and flowers alike. She easily spotted buttercup flowers growing wild among the grass, giving the garden bed striking yellow dots on the green field. Unlike in Riverrun where she could roam the castle as long as she was escorted by her gaolers, Harrenhal was just too massive to have her walking around. Walton was reluctant every time she left the Tower of Dread and there was no September for her to pray for her family. The Battle of Harrenhal had left its September in ruin. The soldiers also roamed around the castle and everywhere she went she saw unfriendly faces. Jaime's warning made her shivered. Fortunately Pia was assigned to tend to her and she was thankful for her cheerful and kind spirit. It was very needed since there is no library and she missed Maester Vimen dearly. They share an interest in needlework and Pia supplies her with more colorful threads. In return she told the servant woman about living in King's Landing and the King's Court. Though she realized she tells the experience not in longing, but disdain. Living in the capital as a royal indeed has its own pleasure. She slept on goose feather pillows and cotton blankets, the seamstress made her clothes adorned with gems and food on the table was always rich and savory. Oddly, she does not miss any of those. Your Grace. They turned to Walton who bowed his head as Robb and his direwolf walked into the Godswood. Both women raised to their feet and Myrcella curtsied, Pia bowing her head. I know I can find you here. Robb said to Myrcella. She felt her heart skip a beat. Maester Vimen wrote in his report that you spent your afternoons in the Godswood, he explained. Yes, Your Grace. I like it, she said. The Godswood, I mean. Pia retreated respectfully and together with Walton they were waiting at the entrance of the Godswood to give them privacy. Grey Wind padded to Myrcella and took a sniff at her hair. She giggled when Grey Wind stretched out its tongue to lick her ear. Its tongue is quite thick but long and soft. He likes you. Robb sounded amused. I like him, too, she responded through her giggle. Grey Wind had not stopped licking her ear. Grey Wind, to me. Don't torture her. Robb smiles and Grey obediently left to rest at his master's heel. She was left flushed and she took a deep breath to compose herself. Do you need something of me, Your Grace? Oh. No, I mean, he shifted his weight from left to right, the tip of his foot tapped the earth mound below. He cleared his throat. I also like to spend time here. Away from the crowd and lords and other people. Just me and Grey Wind. Ah, forgive me. I shall leave then, she offered apologetically and was ready to excuse herself when Rob raised a hand to stop her. It's all right. You can stay. This place is for everyone who seeks the old gods, isn't it? Shame there is no more weirwood tree. She hesitated. Half of her wanted to go to the place Walton and Pia were waiting at the entrance, but the other half wanted to stay and enjoy the afternoon with Rob. Unless you wanted to go, of course. If not, I'd gladly welcome you here, Princess. Rob offered. He scratched Grey Wind's ears. I liked it here, she admitted. I wish I knew the beauty and solace of Godswood and its weirwood tree sooner. Do you plan to abandon the faith of the Seven? Rob jokes. I still pray to them. It's just different. Princess, he began. Myrcella. Please. He raised an eyebrow but smirked upon her reply. Very well. Myrcella. She found she likes the sound of her name on his lips. Yes, Your Grace. Have you met the Kingslayer? I have, Your Grace, thank you for letting me see him. The mention of Jaime made her remember what he had told her a few days ago. She flinched at that, feeling unease in a screw. Don't trust them, she almost could hear him say at the back of her mind. Enemy. Enemy. Enemy, she told herself 1,000,000 times. Yet, when she looked at Rob, she didn't see the enemy her uncle warned her about. Not even the slightest. How is he? The man who treated him said he'll live, Your Grace. She took a step back, unconsciously trying to make distance between her and Rob. Though he will live his life a cripple. They hurt Uncle Jaime and they will hurt you to get to your mother and brother, the voice in the back of her head said. Lord Bolton's hunter said he engaged him in a duel. It was self-defense. She took a step back again, refusing to meet Rob's eyes. Yes, Your Grace. You can call me Rob, too. I don't think you understand how much I cannot do that. I think it won't be appropriate, Your Grace. What is inappropriate is you refused to see me in the eye, he teased, but not unkindly. She held her gaze on his foot and saw he took a step closer to her. Then forgive me, Your Grace. I am your prisoner, she said as she raised her head to meet his eyes, coinciding with him already stood in front of her with his finger under her chin. He had touched her face once, back then in Riverrun, just after Lord Karstark's wrath. At that time he was wearing his leather gloves. Now Rob's rough skin touches her skin directly. His index finger was placed softly under Myrcella's chin, while his thumb was just below her lips. You are not my prisoner, he said softly. Can you let me and my uncle go? She felt audacious to say it, looking unwavering into his blue eyes. I am afraid I'd be lost in it. Unfortunately not. She tried to turn her face away, but Rob's fingers on her chin held back her movements. He was so close, even too close to be proper. Soon after Jaime told her to find something sharp, she had stolen a small knife she found near the carpentry. Walton was talking to Pia when she saw the opportunity to snatch it. The blade was thin and shorter than other knives, but it was sheathed and it matched what Jaime had requested, sharp and small enough to be tucked behind her dress. Every time Pia finished helping her to dress, Myrcella slid the knife behind her corset. She could reach it now, Myrcella thought. He was so near and all she needed to do was draw the knife quick enough to stab him in the neck. Do it, the voice commanded. Do it and end this war. Her eyes flew to Grey Wind, who returned her gaze as if the direwolf could read her mind. Are you going to trade us for Sansa, or not? He thought her words for a second. Perhaps, the Kingslayer will do. And what of me? They will hurt you to get to your mother and brother, the vicious voice in her head whispered again. Do it, before he does. Are you going to hurt me? She asked again when Rob did not answer straight away. She hated to hear her voice quivered. This is the second time you asked. Don't you trust me? Is this how little you think of me? He suddenly looked upset. The silence that came after was deafening. She could hear the breeze rippling the water gently down the stream. Grey Wind whined behind Rob and the sun slipped behind the horizon. His blue eyes become a shade darker under the cloudy sky. Your men hurt my uncle and killed Sir Aris, she said, rather a statement than question. If they lay a hand on you, I'll break their every bone before I have their heads. It was not an answer she expected. Anger flashed in his face. Robb exhales and she realized she had held her breath too. I understand you are concerned about the Kingslayer. And who knows what he whispered to you while you were visiting him. Vicious hogwash, I'd wager. But I didn't order any murder nor killings. Never. His voice softens when she blinked away the tears that started to dwell in her eyes. But when killings have to happen, do you think it didn't haunt me? The 2,000 men I've sent to their graves, thousands more who fell fighting beside me, my friends, my kin, his voice vibrating with anger and sadness. They haunt me, he hissed. Grey Wind's ears perked up at their tension, but the direwolf remained silent in its resting place. A drop of tear dripped onto her cheek. Robb's thumb moved from her chin to wipe the offensive tears from her cheek. So why should you add more blood to your hand if it's not necessary, he whispered, eyes locked on her cheek. Robb was taller than her and he had to lower his head when he looked at her face. She could see how long and thick his eyelashes were. Forgive me, Your Grace, she finally muttered. Robb, he reminded her, his voice soft but powerful enough to send 1,000 butterflies fluttering in her belly. She didn't answer. Her skin tingled where Robb's fingers lingered and her heart beat erratically so hard she thought it might fly out her chest. It felt bizarrely good. What is happening to me? She pondered. Chapter 10. Notes. See the end of the chapter for notes. Chapter text. Twice, Robb Stark said he will not let harm come to her. Twice she had questioned him about it, and twice she had thought to hurt him herself. It brings her shame knowing that Robb is only being honorable like his father. Myrcella realized she witnessed the outrages Joffrey and his men committed for so long, that it made her almost lose trust and respect for lords and kings. She had seen how Sansa Stark lives in fear of Joffrey's wrath. She tried to comfort the older Stark girl, still befriends her somehow, yet she understands Sansa already wear a mask in the form of politeness and courtesies to avoid torture. They used to be friends, but it withered right away when Lord Stark lost his head and War of the Five Kings broke loose. She thought about Sansa a lot, and Arya, and Lord Eddard and Sir Aris. She thought of Tommen and her mother. Sometimes she had to stifle her cry in the night, afraid Pia or Walton and her other guards would hear. Pia slept in a small room connecting to hers. Nightmares came frequently to her. It came in the form of a crowned knight, mocking her, sometimes trying to reach her with his great Valyrian sword. She still dreams of headless knights in crimson and gold, groping, dragging her. I'm so sorry, she pleads to her ghosts. Other times she dreamed of a bed covered in buttercups, flowers on which she laid pale and motionless. Like she was watching herself dead. Every time she jerked awake and trembling, terrified to close her eyes again. She didn't visit the Godswood anymore, not after she learned that Robb also liked to spend time there. She has not had the courage to see him in person. That did not mean she did not want to see him, and the feeling was strange to her. Oftentimes she breaks her fast in the main hall that contains some 30 hearths. The hall was so huge, too crowded, and too noisy that she could almost go unnoticed. Hundreds of men at arms filled the main hall, chattering, singing bawdy songs. One or two would make a move on Pia, who Walton angrily shooed away. I don't get it, Walton grumbled as she and Pia helped themselves with fish porridge and bacon, sitting happily on one of 5 long wooden benches. Why can't you just stay in your room and let the servants bring your food? This place is no place for girls like you. Not even if you try to conceal those golden hair under a hood. He doesn't mean it, milady. Pia's eyes throw daggers towards Walton, who rolled his eyes in dismay. It is fully your right to break your fast in the main hall. I don't mind it. Well, I do. Walton refused to back down. Look at these men. They ogled at you two like hawks eyeing a prey. Pia sized dreamily at Myrcella's surly Gowler. It won't look good on me, Walton started, if something happens to Princess Myrcella under your supervision. Yes, Walton, we knew. Pia swiftly finished his sentence for him and Walton turned beet red. Thank you, Walton, Myrcella said sincerely. Please sit next to Pia and try this porridge. It can make your mood better. It won't, he grunted, but sat next to the pretty servant, anyway. Ignoring Walton, Myrcella tidied the shawl that covered her hair while stealing glances at the giant table at the end of the main hall. Anticipation was a strange energy, the kind of nervous one that tingles through her, sending warm vibration from her head to toe. There was only a reason why sometimes she chose to break her fast in the main hall, even when she shared Walton's concern about ogling soldiers. Rob sat at the center of the long wooden table, talking with Lord Bolton on his left. He was nibbling on his bread while listening to what Lord Bolton said. She just wanted to take a good look at him. Myrcella could see the top of Grey Wind's pointy ears from where she sat. The direwolf was too big now to be covered completely under the table. Rob's blue eyes combed the entire room, nodding and greeting his men. Sometimes he stopped long enough to listen and converse with them. "Look at me." There was always a brief time which Rob held his gaze across the hall, observing his men. She ducked her head then, heart humming fast behind the ribcage. "No, please don't notice me." Normally she waited until Rob rose from his seat and left with his lords and companions. Then she could swallow whatever food in front of her and went back to her chamber with Pierre and Walton. The rest of the day would be spent with them in her chamber, as she avoided the godswood like a plague. That morning was not much different than previous mornings, though a bit peculiar. The main hall was not as packed as usual. Only a few dozen men scattered in 5 long tables in the great hall. The men looked alert and their movements began to look more agile. She sensed something was happening, but she did not really understand what that was. Myrcella sat between Pierre and Walton, who still grumbled for the 100th time, a bowl of porridge and hot bread on her plate. She did not see Rob nor other high lords. Sighing and slowly nibbling on her bread, she tried to hide her crestfallen expression from her 2 friends. Friends, she thought contemplatively. Pierre and Walton's constant presence have been dear to her. Walton defended her from Lord Carstark's ill-meaning plan, and though most of the time the Sauerguard whined about what a mundane duty he was assigned to, Myrcella knew he was good-hearted and loyal to his king. Since they came to Harrenhal, she even noticed Walton's surly expression softens. 1 or 2 rare occasions she'd caught him smiling ear to ear with Pierre. The servant was such a sweetheart, cheerful and eager to please. Myrcella made sure Pierre did not have to feel embarrassed about herself. "Everyone has scars too, it doesn't reduce one's worth. They have grown dear to me, my only friends in the Wolf's Den. Well, aside from Robb Stark, for being honorable, whatever our relationship is. Walton, do you know where the king might be?" she dared ask, though hopefully her voice didn't betray any emotion. "Why?" Walton narrowed his eyes to her. "He is not in the hall." "So?" "Sometimes Walton can be as thick as a bull." King Robb and King Stannis locked themselves in the council room since last night, Pierre answered for her. "I think they are planning something. I heard Martha delivered wine and food to King Robb's chamber this morning." "You are very observant," Walton said to Pierre, in such a tender voice that made Pierre smile. Only in front of Myrcella and Walton, Pierre recently began to speak without having to cover her mouth with her hand. It was a very big leap of trust. Myrcella went back to her food, her mind flew to Robb and her uncle Stannis. She has not seen Stannis yet since she arrived in Harrenhal. But again, Stannis never bothered to know her, and she was just a child the last time she saw him in King's Landing. The only memory she remembered from her grim uncle was how serious the man was. Serious, never smiles, eyes as sharp as a sword. Stannis Baratheon sent ravens to all High Lords of Westeros, announcing Joffrey is neither a true king nor a true Baratheon. "Do you know what it makes you?" Lady Catelyn's words suddenly came to her, and unintentionally her hand shaken so hard that she dropped her tankard of honeyed milk. The white liquid spattered onto the table and the front of her dress. "Milady." Pierre looked concerned, dabbing her dress with a handkerchief. "Are you all right? Can we go back, please?" She rose to her feet without waiting for the answer. "Right away, milady." Pierre, too, rose and glared at Walton, who hurriedly stuffed his last chunk of bread into his mouth. They escorted her back to the Tower of Dread, with Myrcella walking faster than usual. Suddenly she just wanted to be alone in her chamber, solaced by the silent grey stones of her walls as she mended her aching heart. Lady Catelyn's words had awoken something inside her, but what was that? She didn't want to confront it. Not now. She turned in the corner where the entrance to the Tower of Dread is, when she saw him. Robb stood in front of the spiral staircase, conversing with Sir Patrick and 2 other knights in mail chains she didn't recognize. They all looked at her and bowed. "Your Grace, good morning," she curtsied deeply. "Let's talk about it later, shall we?" Rob said to his companions, and with that they bowed their heads again before taking their leave. He turned his attention to her. "I looked for you in the Godswood. My apologies, Your Grace. I don't want to interfere your space." "Don't," he said. "Don't give me space, that's the last thing I want with you." "Me, too. But I can't. I was afraid to meet you there." "Are you mad at me?" His question startled her. "How can I be mad at you? I am angry at myself." "No, Your Grace." "So it is now, Your Grace," he smirked. "It is not fair. I shall call you by your title again. Have you break your fast, Your Grace?" She chose to change the topic. "I hope everything was well." "It was well. I just need more time than usual to sort some things lately." "Of course, Your Grace. You don't have to always eat in the middle of the crowd." "As do you," he replied, smiling. "Think I didn't notice? You're hard to miss, even under that shawl, Princess." The last sentence made her want to crawl under a rock. "Do you always break your fast among your men?" She tried to keep her voice calm and unwavered under his intense gaze. A lord needs to eat with his men if he hopes to keep them. Know the men who follow you and let them know you. Don't ask your men to die for a stranger. My father taught me so. It was a habit in Winterfell." His smile still not leaving his face. Lord Eddard raised his children right. I grew to admire him. Can you please stop smiling? Are you well? Rob asked. He must have noticed the dark circle under her eyes. I am, Your Grace. If you will excuse me, I need to get back to my chamber. She gestured at her stained dress. May I escort you? Rob offered his arm. Myrcella took it warily, hoping he didn't offer such courtesy. That weird feeling whenever Rob stood too near to her always made her belly turn upside down. Yes, you may, Your Grace. Walton and Pia followed in respectful distance as they made their way up the spiral staircase. Every step of their way up made their shoulders rub against each other. Fortunately it took 3 floors away from the ground to her chamber, since only the bottom 5th of each tower was occupied and continued to be serviced. When they reached her door, Myrcella quickly pulled her hand from Rob's arm. Thank you, she began, but Rob turned to Walton and Pia who just reached the end of the stairs. Walton, I expect Princess Myrcella in the West Stable this afternoon. Walton bowed his head. Your Grace. Your Grace, Myrcella spoke up again, bewildered, but this time he addressed Pia. She will need a warm dress and a cloak. Yes, Your Grace. Pia nodded her head. I beg your pardon, Myrcella looked at Rob in disbelief. The young wolf instead retreated to the staircase. I will see you this afternoon, Princess, he said casually, deaf to her complaints. He soon disappeared behind the stairs, leaving her dumbfounded. Later that day Pia spent hours offering to brush her hair, but Myrcella shook her head. Myrcella lay on her bed hugging herself tightly under the blanket. She had been like that since she was back in her chamber. A tray of lunch went untouched as her stomach couldn't process a bite, let alone finishing a whole bowl of venison stew. Hours passed, soon she knew Walton would come to take her to Rob. I don't want to go, she said sternly as Pia brought out a wool dress to her. Its light blue color complements her fair skin and green eyes, but Myrcella was unwilling to even regard Pia's effort on dressing her. But King Rob summoned you. I don't want to. She hated being stubborn, but she's afraid to be near Rob again. It was strange. Even though Myrcella knew it wasn't Rob that scared her, but her own heart. He can have my head if my refusal angered him. Myrcella added, to Pia's horror. A soft knock was heard and Myrcella knew it was Walton. She doesn't want to go, Myrcella heard Pia tell Walton from the door and his guard's gruff voice. Then you and I will be in trouble. Walton said sourly. Let it be. She is exhausted. The king won't be happy. I shall take the girl to the stables by force if needed to. No, you shall not. Pia hissed. Just tell King Rob, milady is not feeling well. Are you crazy, woman, They started to argue and Myrcella sighed. Fine, I will go, she called from the bed, sighing in defeat to stop Walton and Pia arguing. Relief, Pia immediately helped her get dressed, afraid she would change her mind again. Afterwards the servant brushed her hair and braided the long hair into a thick fishtail braid crown. Myrcella only owns one simple black cloak given by the seamstress in Riverrun, and Pia tied the cloak around her shoulders. As usual, she slipped the small knife behind her corset. She was good to go just then. Walton rolled his eyes when she finally emerged from her chamber. Come on now, girl, I don't want to make the king waiting, he grumbled, but said nothing more as Pia shot him a look. Rob undeniably has already been waiting in front of the stable. He wore his grey armor under the fur surcoat. I thought you wouldn't come, he said as a greeting when Myrcella approached and gave a half-hearted curtside. I did consider not to come, your grace, she admitted, gesturing to